I kind of don't think the Black Lagoon should have a sequel to begin with.
Sure.
We accepted the challenge that we were going to do this.
Yeah.
Right? And our whole podcast is based on the conceit of that this is a bad idea.
Yes.
In 2017, Universal Studios announced the birth of a new shared universe of monster movies, bringing their classic horror icons into the contemporary franchise film landscape. But after the critical and financial failure of its first installment, the project was indefinitely abandoned. Now, in 2024, the powers that be have called upon one pulp horror devotee and one snarky film critic to unearth the concept. I'm Dylan Roth.
And I'm Dalton DeShane.
Are you afraid of the dark universe?
Welcome back to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe, the podcast where we attempt to resurrect Universal Studios' failed cinematic universe of monster movies, one pitch at a time. I am your underwater host, Dylan Roth.
And I am your non-binary host, Dalton DeShane.
And together we have been building out the Dark Universe into an ongoing narrative to rival the MCU.
And it turns out underwater creatures and non-binary people are related in our Dark Universe, thanks to my first entry in the Black Lagoon series.
Yes, if you're just joining us for the first time, first of all, welcome. However, you're going to want to listen to at least one episode of this show before you check out this one, because this
is a sequel.
A sequel. This is Return to the Black Lagoon, my sequel to Dalton's fan favorite pitch, The Black Lagoon from Phase 2.
Now, eagle-eyed fans may notice that that is not the title that Dylan promised us previously.
No, I was very into the idea of the title Beneath the Black Lagoon. I thought it sounded cool, and I was sure I was going to figure out what it meant.
Up until last week, I thought that was going to be the title.
But as I was polishing up the script, I realized that it really was not, it would not be setting up the movie to fulfill the promise of the title.
Because you never went beneath the Black Lagoon.
Also, the title Return to the Black Lagoon ends up being more meaningful, I think, than it even immediately sounds.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
And important to note, we almost didn't get here.
Yes.
To this record. This is our third attempted scheduled date.
Yes.
For the record.
It has been a really rough couple of weeks for the Cass Roth household. We just lost a member of her family.
Yeah.
And she had been ill for a period of time. This is someone who's just like so very important to my wife and has become a really good friend of mine over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And she'd been gone for a while, and it was very difficult. And the closer it became, the more certain it became that we were going to lose her shortly. It became very difficult to keep appointments to do things with you, but also B, just kind of focus on writing something that it will be no surprise to anyone is like kind of about death. Many of our stories are about death.
Turns out in a horror universe.
And I found that living through the experience of having a loved one gradually slip away from us was not helping. Not helping my creative process at all. My imagination just fucking broke. And I texted you around the time we were supposed to record it the first time. And I think I said, this is a disaster. It's just not common. I'm not there.
Yeah.
And so we were preparing to do, and at the time I was like, I don't think more time is going to solve the problem. I think we're going to have to workshop this on the air or I'm not going to get there.
Well, at first you wanted to, and first of all, I told you this off air, but I'm very sorry for your loss. I know it's been a rough time at home. And of course it sucks to have any sort of due date lingering over you while you're dealing with a family emergency. And we were prepared to punt this one another 2 weeks because obviously your life takes precedence over the podcast.
But there was also, we were talking about this, you and I agreed that this can't, not that I've ever shat anything out for the show, but there have been scripts where it's definitely been a very obvious sprint to the finish.
Yeah.
Kill Your Darlings. Obviously, if I'd had more time with that, I think it would have been a lot different.
Yeah.
But and that was the very last one that I did up for the show, right? That was still only 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So this being the sequel to The Black Lagoon, an episode that's really important to a lot of our listeners, it simply cannot be an incomplete product. It had to be finished or at least interesting in how we finish it together. But it was really looking as much as 3 days ago. It was looking like there was just no way I was going to land this thing.
Mhm.
And then the past 2 days, and Aunt Roz passed 2 days ago now.
Mhm.
In the past 48 hours, I was, I guess, with the weight lifted of the anxiety about this, and with my emotions now stirred up in a different way. I mean, obviously, it's not as if you lose somebody then immediately I'm fine now. It's very often the opposite of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It started working again, and
Okay.
I was fucking. We mentioned this a little bit off the air, but like, there's that fear I think that a lot of artists have of one day waking up and like, oh no, it's gone,
Mhm.
right? Like we think of. It's a dangerous thing to think of, the idea of being like, oh, I'm a creative person. I have this spark of inspiration inside of me. And it's like, that's not really how it works. What you have is a set of tools, and you work on your tools. Your tools can get duller. They can get sharpened. Sometimes they can stop working, or your muscles can get tired, but you recover, right? These are not skills you lose. They are muscles that you can strain. I think you can give yourself like a psychic sprain trying to work out a story, and then you're useless for a period of time. But it came back to me, and I now feel as if I'm not going into this with like the boundless confidence that I had going into, say, Phantom of the Phantom, where I just knew that through sheer fucking novelty and the amount of fun I had writing it was, I knew I'd done a really good job. But here I feel good about what I've turned in. I feel like I've held pretty true to the spirit of what you wrote.
Yeah, I mean, you had maybe the hardest challenge in the Dark Universe so far, and we've given ourselves a lot of hard challenges.
Yes. I mean, certainly this was the hardest one that I've faced. I think that Love Never Dies probably qualifies as the most challenging work altogether, because you had to write a fucking rock opera.
I mean, I wouldn't call it challenging though. It was a lot of work. The volume was great, but it was fun, and it's stuff I know how to write music, like it was that I didn't have too much writer's block over it. But you had to take and I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, but I think what is our most unique film in our Dark Universe, a very standalone, singular story, and one that deals with gender identity.
Yeah, thing which is like, it's not as if everyone has a relationship with their gender, right? And everybody should think about it. Like, people who think that they don't have to think about it are kind of fucking it up for everybody. But,
yeah, I would argue that most people never think about it.
Yeah, but hopefully that's changing.
We had this idea to change, characters, which for most of the assignments was easy, except then you get not only a movie that has a very specific and intricate lore that is very kind of complicated, but also the entire film is about a child who is going through a gender crisis and is depressed and possibly suicidal over it. And then, which me, as someone who recently came out as non-binary, felt like a more natural story to tell. But then, as our straight cisgender host, you have to write the sequel to it. And that's not an easy task. And it's not it wasn't a classic monster movie where you can just be like, oh, and so next, the monster attacks a bigger town or something.
And we never want to make a movie that's just more of the previous one. Like, we try to do something different every time. But I got to tell you, Dalton, thinking about the Black Lagoon, on top of everything else, what made this so difficult is I really felt like I was looking at a blank page here. You
were texting me constantly that you had zero ideas.
Until around the time that we recorded, I guess, the Village of the Damned episode with Avery Edison, I had fucking nothing. And it wasn't as if I hadn't been thinking about it.
Even though you kind of forced yourself into something with the post-credits of Hunchback.
Yeah. Well, I did that on purpose, right?
Yeah.
I knew I had to give myself something I couldn't take back, that I had to commit to. That was me trying to sort of cheat by, like, I like when you throw me, like, probably a direct response to, in the Hunchback, I had a list of objectives that I inherited from you.
So you wanted to give yourself
I wanted to give myself
objectives,
one, right? I had to tee something up that I would have to hit.
And I hope you hit it.
I think I did. We'll see.
Okay.
I mean, certainly that moment's in the script and is important, is foundational. But God, I had such a hard time, and it took me so long. I had to question my methodology. Like, I tried to, when my imagination was not working, I tried to adopt more of your methodology and do more plotting ahead. And then ultimately ended up feeling restored in my confidence in the way that I do things, because almost nothing from that outline that I wrote ended up in the script. I ended up overwriting almost all of it as I was writing. And as always, finding it in the scenes, finding it in the character interactions, completely changing the climax, completely changing what the characters' relationships to each other were and what motivates them. And hopefully landing at something that feels natural. And I hope means something. But one of the things that I want to do in this episode, I say after yammering for 12 minutes, is one of the things I want to do is to honor something that I still think about from your Black Lagoon episode, which is that it's not important to have all the answers to every question or to provide all of the answers that you have. I wanted this to be an experience that was that wasn't so rigid and concrete and sci-fi writery of me, you know?
Yeah, and that's something we talked a lot with cat people too, because this is sort of a double-edged sword. This is now going to be your second that's kind of like that. And we talked about cat people. One of the sort of problems we encountered at the end was it wasn't clear what questions it was. You know, it wasn't that it wasn't giving answers. It was that it wasn't clear what questions the script was asking.
I believe that I have clear thematic questions here. There are specifics that I think are up to a lot of people to fill in for themselves. Where I have an idea of what I think something means, but I'm, unless pressed, will probably not answer.
Okay.
And there's also I decided I didn't really give a shit about the rules very much because it's magic. And I would rather it be I would rather it serve the emotion of a scene or the visual of a scene than be internally consistent.
Sure. Because
the Black Lagoon as a space has wobbly physics, has wobbly rules, and blah, blah, blah. And so I decided rather than sweat that or have to, there were pages of explanations for stuff that I fucking cut. I threw it out.
That's good.
I didn't want it. If need be, I can break it out. I can explain it if something's unclear. If you think it needs to be back
dive
in
into
there.
it in the Discord.
Yes. So, but yeah, expectations are very high for this, and I was very nervous, and I hope it worked out. So let's get into some of the specific expectations.
Let's get into the
audience had.
There were a lot of them. As we talked about, I think this was a very anticipated episode for a lot of people. And if you didn't have any ideas, the fans sure did, because especially on Instagram, people went into a lot of detail about things they wanted to see in this movie. But none of them were really the same. There wasn't a lot of overlap. But I've got a lot of them. I definitely couldn't get to all of them. So I'm sorry if I skipped yours, but I'm going to try to rush through these. Number one, on the Discord, we were talking about baby Gilman and how if this were a studio sequel, the studio would absolutely mandate a bunch of tiny little baby ferrymen running around and causing havoc, and like hunters chasing them around and trying to stop them. I think it was first mentioned by Vex Vixen on our Discord, and then everyone started riffing on it. But Discord user Zfig drew a baby Gilman, like a little what's it called?
Chibi?
Yeah, like a chibi Gilman that is so cute. Maybe we'll post it on the Discord.
Yeah, well,
on the Instagram.
I want to see it there because I deliberately don't look when these expectations are getting asked for.
It was very cute. So maybe some baby Gilman. One of our newer patrons, Design Skeleton on Discord, had some interesting ideas about Hunter's relationship to the lagoon, saying, I'd love to see the exploration of someone with suicidal ideation's life after they have a handle on it. Hunter has acclimated to the lagoon and their new identity, so no longer exists in the same relationship to danger and death, but it still lingers at the edge of their experience. So what does that mean for Hunter as a person, and what does it mean for their relationship to the lagoon and the ferryman? Which I thought that was very, very good, because the lagoon represents sort of the specter of death for Hunter. And I think that's a good question now that Hunter is theoretically no longer suicidal.
I would say that that's a very interesting theme to tackle in the sequel to The Black Lagoon.
Luke on the Discord, his prediction is that you will turn away from the gender stuff because you don't have as much context for it, which is also my prediction. Okay. I think this is very much, I could hear you being like, look, I don't have the experience to be writing about gender stuff, so I kind of turned away from that angle of it. But on the flip side, Great9 Rejects on Instagram thinks that Hunter's gender identity is actually tied to how the lagoon behaves. And so there'll be some problems where they need to fully accept themselves to return the lagoon to normal. Roxanne on the Discord thinks we might finally get mermaids in the dark universe via the Black Lagoon, or that we might meet another former keeper of the lagoon. A lot of people, including Balthazar on the Discord, think that we might see Carol because of the lagoon's connection to hell, and of course Hunter's relationship to Carol. There was a lot of talk, I think started by Soonmot on the Discord, of a time-traveling, older, battle-scarred Hunter coming back to stop Carol from dying, and Hunter having to contend with their own older self, very Old Man Logan style. I had a prediction that you would get some of the lore wrong because you wouldn't read the previous script again.
Oh, I went back a bunch.
Okay.
But in some cases,
both of us have done that.
In some cases, I just said fuck it. To be honest, I will warn you that there are times where it's inconsistent, and I don't care.
I will get mad at you on the fans' behalf.
Okay.
Soulless Gaijin on Twitter thinks that we'll get a tragic backstory for the Ferryman, alongside an origin for the lagoon, and maybe a connection to our heaven lore. And Kate L. Kerplunk on Instagram also wants a Ferryman origin. By the way, when we say Ferryman, I'm referring to the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Right. We frequently use, you use Ferryman in that original script.
Yes.
You referred to him as the Ferryman in the Dark Legion sequel. So
his role is basically the ferryman on the river Styx, sort of ferrying people from the living world to hell via the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, I tend to use the two terms interchangeably.
Yeah. Paul Alamani on Blue Sky thinks the lagoon will show up somewhere cold and be frozen as just kind of a cool visual, the frozen Black Lagoon. Lots of detailed Instagram predictions, like I said. A lot of people want more lore. People love lore. It sounds like we're not going to get that, but people want Black Lagoon lore.
I cut a lot of the lore. I'm sorry, folks.
Justin KM145 has a theory about the floating water spheres that we saw in Hunchback. He thinks that it's tied to hell, and that as hell is preparing for war, the lagoon is literally starting to boil over, and it creates these bubbles that sort of float in the air, which I thought was a good prediction. We got to get some sort of reference to those bubbles. And finally, for now, everyone can check out more predictions on our Discord or on our social media, but 0011 thinks that we will see a whole different relationship between Hunter and the Ferryman now that it's been a few years, and that perhaps they'll even team up by the end of the movie to stop whatever the threat is. So lots of specific predictions on this one.
Yeah. I don't want to comment too much because some of these are, at least one there just fucking like really nailed it.
Sounds like maybe that first one.
They'll know when they get there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, here's something that I will say up top.
Okay.
The director I have chosen for this is our most off-the-wall pick, I think, ever.
Okay.
He's never made a film, but when I was thinking about what I would want in terms of the visual ambition of this, and the ability to like manage a somber tone with some really off-the-wall elements, my mind went to video game auteur Hideo Kojima.
Wow.
Who I would love to see make a horror film.
Wait, you should just get George Miller then.
I mean, I guess Julian and I were just talking about this.
Hideo loves George Miller.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think of that, and maybe sometimes I like to stay away from somebody whose movies I just watched.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when it's over, do let me know what you think. I don't know. I mean, I just watched every George Miller movie. If you're listening to the bonus pod, you heard me talk about that experience last week.
Maybe we'll put that clip in this episode.
Yeah, maybe. So it's funny that I didn't think of George Miller because I literally watched 8 George Miller movies in the past 6 weeks.
Well, you're the Kojima expert. I've never played a Kojima game.
Kojima is cerebral and surreal, and also has like a really goofy sense of humor that's kind of a dad humor sometimes. I think that the Black Lagoon, your Black Lagoon, would fucking vibe with Hideo Kojima. I think it would be the kind of movie that Kojima fucking tweets about for days and days, which is, one of the... Every once in a while, he'll fix onto something and he'll just post about it nonstop, whether it's a movie or an actor or an album.
I hope this means that Hunter Schafer will be making an appearance in this. Or is Hunter already cast?
Hunter was cast as the lead of our Colossus.
Right? Yeah.
And For that very reason, I tried to think if there was a way to put that character in this.
Because Hideo will find a way. Hideo will get Hunter
will find a
Schafer
way,
in
but
this.
there just was not a way in this movie for me to squeeze in something from Colossus, the Forbidden Project.
That's a hard one. Yeah.
When I picked Kojima, I thought, oh, should Hunter Schafer be in this? Actually, that choice did not affect the casting at all. I did not use any of Hideo Kojima's favorite motion capture.
Well, Mads is already in the Dark
Mads
Universe.
is already in the Dark Universe. We have not used, let's see, some of the other ones that he likes are, I've lost her name. She's in the Bond movie. She's in Dune. She's French.
Oh, Léa Seydoux?
Léa Seydoux, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or what's his name? Daryl Dixon from The Walking Dead. It was not.
Daryl would have been a good that asshole militiaman.
Yeah, he could have been good for that. I mean, it's very much the same type as Sawyer from Lost.
Sawyer from Lost.
All right, well, we're 20 minutes in.
We should get into it.
Let's dive into, or rather, let's say we shall return. Submitted for the approval of the Universal Studios Board of Directors, this is Dylan Roth's Return to the Black Lagoon. We fade from black to what looks like a deep trench in icy water.
Frozen Lagoon? Frozen Lagoon?
As our view slowly rotates, we discover that we've been looking at the reflection of a mountain on the surface of a frozen lake, lit by a full moon. Two men in heavy winter coats walk through snowy terrain towards the ice. They drag a sled behind them with a pair of ropes. The contents of the sled are obscured by a thick blanket. This lake is deserted, save for one ice fisher set up with a chair, a pole, and a cooler way off in the distance. The two men wave to the stranger, and the stranger waves back. The two men keep walking until they can no longer see the stranger. The larger of the two men waves off the other one. He lowers his scarf so he can speak, allowing us to see his face. This is Miro, portrayed by Kim Bodnia, who played Spymaster Konstantin on Killing Eve. He's an old man with a thick beard and hard eyes. He speaks in Russian, subtitled in English.
This is good. Get the drill.
The other man is younger. His beard is more neat, like he cares more about how he presents himself. This is Sergei, played by Pavel Zajda from For All Mankind. Sergei drops his rope and goes to the sled. He pulls back the blanket, revealing a freshly dead body of a man about his age. There's a bullet hole in his forehead. Sergei heaves the body out of the sled. He lands limp on the ice with a heavy thud, but the ice is thick and neither shifts nor cracks. Sergei rifles through the sled's remaining contents and retrieves an ice auger, a small manual drill used for ice fishing. He hands it to Miro, who presses the auger's point to the ice and starts turning the crank. Miro turns to his young companion.
Here. We set it all up like a regular fishing trip. His brother finds his chair and his pole out here, and if the body ever turns up, who's to say what happened?
You don't think the hole I put in his head might clue them in?
Then it's my word against nobody's. You're not planning on ratting us out to Nico, are you?
Sergei doesn't answer. He's looking at the body. He closes his eyes and mutters a prayer. Miro laughs.
Save your prayers, kid. There's no God, remember? It's hell for everyone, saints and sinners alike. And our boy Max here was no saint.
We used to play football together.
Yeah, and I used to fuck his auntie. So what?
Sergei doesn't answer. Miro stops drilling and side-eyes Sergei.
Sergei, this isn't your first time, is it?
I killed people before. In the army.
Yeah, but this is different. No one's gonna give you a medal for this. Except for me, nobody's gonna know what happened. Old Max is just gonna disappear. No body for the funeral, no peace for the family. People are gonna ask you if you've seen him, and you're gonna lie right to their faces.
Sergei still looks down at his victim. His eyes are nearly as lifeless. Miro steps back from the golf ball-sized hole he's just drilled in the ice, then kicks it with the heel of his boot until the ice around it caves in and becomes large enough for a body to fit through. He looks at Sergei, still shell-shocked. Miro wipes his nose with his sleeve.
Throw the gun in there.
Sergei looks into the hole skeptically. Are you sure?
Yeah. You don't want to be caught with it, do you? Throw it in.
This is still water. If they find the body, the gun probably won't drift far.
Kid, which of us has done this before? I'm doing you a favor here.
After a moment's hesitation, Sergei tosses the gun into the hole. It sinks. Miro tightens his grip on the auger. Before Sergei looks up, Miro roars and swings the heavy metal tool at Sergei's head. It lands hard against the side of his skull. Sergei stumbles, then charges at Miro, tackling him off his feet. They roll across the ice, struggling over the auger. The younger man gets the upper hand and knocks the auger against Miro's face. He gets up and starts running. Sergei, still dazed from his blow to the head, runs across the tundra in the direction of the only other figure in the distance, the ice fisher they saw as they were walking earlier. Sergei cries out. We cut away to the far-off figure, wrapped up in thick winter gear and wearing large headphones. The figure doesn't hear Sergei's cries and continues to look down at their electronic device. Sergei runs as best he can, waving one arm while pressing the other to his bleeding head. Behind him, the less wounded Miro is gaining. The ice under Sergei's feet is getting thinner. Cracks start to appear under his steps. Miro is mere inches behind. He reaches out after his prey, trying to grab his jacket. He gets a piece of it and pulls hard, yanking Sergei off his feet. But he can't hang on as Sergei falls forward onto the ice. Sergei's body instantly breaks through the thin ice and begins to sink. Miro stops just short of the hole. He falls to his knees and waits for Sergei to surface. Under the ice, Sergei tumbles through the water, stumbling to right himself. He swims in the direction that he's pretty sure is up, banging against the ice above him and trying to find where he fell in. Our view slowly rotates so that it now appears as if he's banging on the ground. The water level around him gradually lowers, as if he's kneeling in a draining bathtub. It lowers past his head, and he takes a gasping breath of air. He rolls onto his back, now lying flat on the ice, just next to the hole through which he fell. Sergei begins laughing hysterically at this impossible, life-saving happenstance. He takes a long enough break from his laughing fit to look up and see, about 100 meters away, what appears to be a sandy hill, as if a tropical island was rising out of the frozen lake. Sergei rises slowly to his feet, trying to make sense of all he's seen. Suddenly, a hand reaches out through the hole, not Miro's hand, but a scaly, green-webbed claw, which grabs Sergei by the ankle and pulls him off his feet. He falls forward and breaks his nose against the ice. Blood gushes from his face, and one of his teeth slides across the ice in front of him. Sergei, concussed, reaches for the tooth and tries in vain to put it back into his mouth. Meanwhile, behind him, a tall, broad-shouldered green figure rises from the hole in the ice, just out of focus. Sergei, badly rattled, giggles as he fiddles with his loose tooth. Behind him, a green finger with a long, sharp, claw-like nail reaches down and touches the back of his head and pushes, drilling into his skull until Sergei's face goes totally slack. Above the ice, Miro pulls the auger out of the limp Sergei's skull and kicks his soaking wet body back into the hole. Aching from his injuries, he limps back in the direction he came from.
Shout out to Paul Alemany on Instagram.
You nailed
called the frozen lagoon.
Miro passes by the unidentified ice fisher and waves as if nothing's happened. We stay with the stranger, who waves back. They lean over and open their cooler. Inside is a gooey egg sack nearly the size of a volleyball, full of shiny black eggs. Also, a couple cans of a Russian energy drink. They reach past the egg sack, where another egg has just formed, and pull out a can. The stranger cracks open the can and pulls down their scarf, revealing the face of Hunter Marin, who we will now announce we've cast Zelia Mendez-Jones.
We're going to talk about this when we break for the title.
Yes.
But
they take a swig and stare out at Miro as he disappears in the night. They look puzzled for a moment, perhaps wondering where that guy's friend went. They shrug it off and return to playing on their Steam Deck. We pull upward to an overhead view and see that Hunter's chair and ice fishing hole are in the center of a ring of strange arcane sigils, dug into the ice not by hand, but by magic. We pull up until all we can see is the blank white snow. Title: Return to the Black Lagoon.
all right, that is a hell of a cold open. No, but I legitimately love this. This is a great riff on all the Black Lagoon physics we've seen. It is the same. It is a familiar circumstance, but in completely unfamiliar territory. It's a murder, some sort of mob hit kind of thing, in a frozen area, which is someplace we haven't been with the lagoon or really anywhere except for Frankenstein. This is a perfect opening to a sequel for the Black Lagoon.
Thank you.
It really, the reveal that like Hunter's just chilling there, looking at the Steam Deck, I think is really perfect. I think this is the best possible opening to a sequel like this. This is a great cold open.
I'm really happy with this.
The water draining and the ice at the bottom, the ice becoming like a ceiling and then becoming the floor, and the water draining.
What I didn't
that's
put
all
in there
very,
is
very
I like
cool.
the idea that the water is like draining through the hole in the ice.
Yeah.
And I actually saved this for last in my writing process. For a while, this was just I want a vignette that will mirror the opening of the Black Lagoon. That is just like, this is like in a Bond movie, especially a classic one where it doesn't all have to tie together. You just have a little opening thing where this is the Black Lagoon. This is what the creature does. This is an everyday occurrence.
Yes. It's perfect.
Thank you.
Now, let's talk about this casting a little bit.
Right, because this was actually your choice, and I agree.
Well, so, I think probably about a month or so ago, it was before we taped Invisible Man's Revenge. I was watching Fallout, and the first episode of Fallout has a trans mask actor named Zelia Mendez-Jones, who I couldn't find much information about online, but could see that online that
they're also he or they
they
also on the Wheel of Time, a show you could not pay me to watch.
I did not see that. Here's why I was originally going to announce this casting in Invisible Man's Revenge, and I didn't. And the reason is, after I looked them up again, I found out they're half Indian.
Yeah, not Mexican.
I have no idea what the politics of that are. I simply do not know.
Yeah, because here's the problem. Like, as we've talked about in the past, we don't have the ability to do casting calls and find actors of demographics who haven't had their moment.
And we also don't have sensitivity readers and stuff on hand for the quick turnaround time and stuff.
Let us know what you think of that. Like, this is someone who has the look we're going for, is very magnetic as a presence in Fallout. I mean, like, appears very briefly on Fallout and is remembered by everybody who watched it.
Yeah, and I think they're young enough, I think, to play a 17-year-old Hunter.
Yeah,
but also, I think the key thing we're looking for as Hunter is someone trans mask. This is someone who uses he, they pronouns.
We're imagining, I've always, at least in my head, imagined like we're looking at somebody who's kind of like rail thin, I think is one of the things that I think of for Hunter, with sort of like, and this sort of jet black hair, and there's a certain, a really good balance that Zelia has between, like, in this role at least. I mean, we only have this one thing to go by in our experience, but this is somebody who is young and trying to be a soldier.
Yeah.
And that's an energy I think that translates very well to
Hunter.
world-weary teen with sometimes the stakes, the fate of the world at their hands. But you all let us know what you think of that.
Yeah.
Because once again, if we had the ability to put out a casting call in the shooting of a real movie, we would probably be like, yeah, we're looking for a like Mexican or at least Latinx non-binary masked actor who also checks all the other boxes we're looking for.
Yeah, like the thing is also, like, I just don't know much about them. It could be that they're half Indian and half Hispanic. Like, there's not much info out there other than like one celebrity rumors site says, they're half Indian or something.
Right.
And again, like, I don't know what the politics of that are. Like, casting an Indian actor to play a Mexican character. I just, it's so far beyond my experience. I don't know if it's problematic or not.
So you tell us. We
love the actor.
We
like
the actor a lot. And that's the main thing. We wouldn't just say, "Oh, hey, finally we found a trans mask actor that people have heard of. We can apply." If they weren't a fit, we wouldn't even think about it.
No, but I think they fit Hunter very well.
Very well.
Yeah.
I think that as I'm writing this felt like very much like I could, again, very limited experience with this actor.
Yeah.
So it is,
but they're great in.
But yeah, in the limited experience, I'm like, oh yeah, that scans, that works for me. So let us know what you think, and we'll lock it in or not lock it in.
Yeah. But I love this cold open. We should keep moving. Let's dive into Act 1.
Act 1. The next morning, Hunter sits down at an internet cafe in a small Russian city. They've been up all night and order the strongest coffee available in some surprisingly good Russian. They pop open their laptop, a pretty chunky thing built for gaming. They pick up on a run of Balatro, that poker-based puzzle game that everyone's nuts about right now.
It's so fucking good.
They've also got a Discord text chat open with a user named Quasimodo. We'll read this text conversation aloud and hopefully find a way to make it visually interesting in the film. I'm open to ideas about how that should be done. So I'm reading Quasi, and you are Hunter. Balatro again? I haven't seen you play anything else for weeks.
Yeah? What of it?
Lol. It can't be that good.
Well, it's single player and there's no punching, so probably not for you.
Haha. Yeah, no thanks. I still don't get the appeal of a game without a real opponent. Hunter minimizes Balatro and goes to YouTube. They pull up a subtitled clip from the movie Creed, in which legendary boxer Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone, instructs his protege Adonis Creed, Michael B. Jordan, to get into a fighting stance and stare at himself in a full-length mirror. You see this guy staring back at you? That's your toughest opponent. Every time you get into that ring, that's who you're going against. I believe that in boxing, and I do believe that in life. Hunter drops a link to the clip into the chat with Quasimodo. After a moment, Quasi texts back, "What's this from?"
You haven't seen Creed? You'd love it. It's all about boxing and daddy issues.
Quasimodo replies with a grumpy emoji. Hunter hesitates a moment, then types,
Victor always asked me to say hi to you for him.
"Okay,
Sorry. Didn't mean to make it weird.
it's fine. Do you talk to him about me?"
Not really. He just knows we're friends. I think he feels better knowing someone is in touch with you.
I don't really want to hear about how he feels.
Right. Sorry.
Does your mom know anyone who knows you? If you stopped sending her rent money every month, would she even know if you were dead or alive? Hunter grits their teeth, frustrated. They type intensely at their keyboard and say aloud as they send.
Jesus. Okay, Quasi, I get it.
Hunter shuts the laptop violently, attracting glares from the nearby patrons. They take a few calming breaths and then focus on their coffee. It's the next night at the fishing hole. Hunter hears something shift in their cooler. They open it, retrieve the plump, squelching egg sack, and place it carefully on the ice. Another black egg grows in between two of its brothers. A moment later, the entire sack clenches like a fist and sinks into the ice, leaving no trace but the ring of sigils around it. For Hunter, this is a totally mundane occurrence. They pop open their phone and type to Quasimodo again.
Looks like I'm moving again.
Where to? Hunter reaches into their pocket and retrieves a shiny purple-green object, like a large fish scale, the size of their palm. They close their hand tight around it, close their eyes, and take a deep breath. They open their eyes and text back to Quasi.
South.
Next, we see Hunter getting out of a cab at the airport. They board a flight to Auckland, New Zealand. Hunter lands in Auckland, checks the scale again, then boards another smaller plane to Westport, where they rent a recreational vehicle and start driving out of town. Hunter pulls their RV up to a remote and beautiful beach, about as peaceful a place as you can imagine. They step out and gaze across the sand around them. There lies another ring of ornate symbols around a shallow sandpit containing a much smaller, less full, gooey egg sack. Hunter walks up to the edge of the ring and clutches the scale again. Puzzled, they look down at the egg sack, then out at the ocean ahead. Something feels off, but for now, they decide to live with it. Hunter extends an awning over their RV's ad hoc front porch, plants themselves in a beach chair, and basks in the splendor of the beach. Crossfade to Hunter, still in that beach chair, playing on their Steam Deck at sunset. Their attention is down at their game, so focused they don't notice as a baseball-sized bubble of water floats by in front of their face. When they finally look up, their mouth falls open in amazement. Across the sigil-adorned sand, spherical pools of water are slowly rising from the ocean and floating into the air. Drop by drop, the sea is rising, literally, off of the ground. Cut to hours later in the dead of night. A helicopter is descending onto the beach, a little too close to the egg sack and the ring of sigils. Its propellers blow the sand around, wiping some of the symbols away. Hunter runs out from their RV, waving their arms and shouting, their words totally washed out by the noise. The helicopter lands and a tall woman of obvious authority steps out, escorted by two armed Prodigium agents. This is Deputy Director Demi Lavelle, portrayed by Lucy Lawless, who will use her own Kiwi accent, which I will not attempt.
I'm saying right now, we are not replacing Indrid Cold as a shortcut in our Dark Legion movies. We got rid of Indrid Cold. We can't now just replace him with Lucy Lawless.
Let's move on.
It's okay for this movie because we have to address it with Hunter, but I'm just saying when we get to Dark Legion 3, we can't have Lucy Lawless showing up to get our characters somewhere.
Have a little faith with me on this one.
Okay.
When the propellers quiet down, Hunter immediately gets in Lavelle's face.
Are you fucking crazy? Those sigils in the sand are the only thing between us and a bloodthirsty sea monster from hell.
Stand down, Mix Marin. I'm well aware of the containment protocols. I haven't weakened the barrier nearly enough to let the ferryman loose in the mortal world. I'm sure you can recreate the symbols in short order. That is your job, isn't it?
And who are you supposed to be?
I'm Deputy Director Demi Lavelle. I oversee all Prodigium operations in Oceania.
I want to talk to Indrid Cold.
Mr. Cold is not available, nor is his presence necessary. I'm in command here. Report. Hunter grits their teeth, then leads Lavelle around the perimeter of the sigils towards what used to be the shoreline. The risen sea now forms a canopy over the ocean floor, a tunnel about 3 meters high and 100 meters wide that extends as far as the eye can see. The wet sand where the ocean used to be is also carved with symbols, but new and different ones. Hunter retrieves the shiny purple-black object from their pocket and looks down on it.
This is a scale from the Ferryman, the creature from the Black Lagoon. It always knows where he is, and when I hold it, so do I. That's how I follow the lagoon from place to place. It usually leads me to the egg sac, the lagoon's anchor in the mortal world. After I got here, I couldn't figure out why the scale was still pulling me. It was leading me past the edge of the ocean like it wanted me to walk right into the sea. And then, at nightfall, this shit happened.
Hunter drops to one knee by the mouth of the tunnel and indicates the new symbols in the sand.
The symbols on the ocean floor are different from the ones that always appear around the egg sac each time the lagoon changes location. I ran a few of them through the D-base, and there's no match. If I had to guess, I'd say they're protective, like the ones around the egg sac.
How far into the tunnel do they extend?
I don't know. This is as far as I've gone.
You haven't been inside?
Into the magical archway that's holding up 10 tons of water, which just appeared here and could collapse at any time without warning? No, I haven't been inside.
Do you think the Black Lagoon is on the other end of that tunnel?
I don't know what to think. Except for the egg sac and those symbols, there shouldn't be any sign of the lagoon in the mortal world at all, except to people who tread the line between life and death.
People like you.
No. I haven't seen the lagoon itself in years.
What changed?
I did.
Lavelle looks up at the tunnel. Our satellites haven't picked up anything else unusual in the area. Even this tunnel phenomenon is barely perceptible from overhead. Our answers are in there, and someone has to go in after them. Lavelle looks at Hunter. There is an implied request. Hunter ignores it. Cut to a team of 6 nondescript Prodigium agents strapping on equipment and cocking rifles. They approach the mouth of the tunnel. Above them, waves crash upside down. Water occasionally sprays and splashes into the zone of real gravity, dripping onto their heads. Hunter and Lavelle stand nearby. Hunter turns to Lavelle and protests.
This is a bad idea.
It's 4:30 a.m. The lagoon usually disappears at sunrise, correct?
Yes, but
Sunrise is scheduled for 7:11 a.m. Assuming the lagoon's habits haven't changed, that means our agents should be able to search the tunnel for just over an hour, then turn back and be ashore before the clock runs out.
sunrise here is at 7:11 a.m. Who knows when it'll be on the other side of the tunnel, or if that even matters.
There's no way of knowing whether this tunnel will even reappear tomorrow night, or if it'll appear somewhere else. We need data.
Then send a fucking drone or something.
You know as well as I do that the Black Lagoon can't be observed by electronic equipment. Most humans can't even see it unless they're living in the shadow of death. Lavelle looks out at her 6 agents, standing in awe beneath the mouth of the sea tunnel. I don't think that should be an obstacle tonight. Hunter regards Lavelle with disgust. Are you certain I can't convince you to leave the team? They turn their back and start walking towards the RV.
Tell them to watch their step in there.
We follow the 6 Prodigium agents as they walk carefully through the tunnel, trying not to disturb the icons carved into the seabed. The ground beneath them is also uneven, marked by rocks, caves, and coral, which makes it harder not to step on the sigils. A few get wiped away by stray footfalls. Occasionally, a crustacean skitters along beneath the party. We see a confused crab cautiously tap its claw against the ocean wall. One of the soldiers, Givens, is startled as a fish jumps out from the water by his head and flops, panicked, on the ground. Givens kneels down and carefully picks up the fish and dips it back into the ocean beside him. One of his colleagues chuckles and ribs him fondly for being such a softie. Hours pass, and they're eventually far enough out that they can no longer see the shore. We get some more chatter to indicate that the sense of wonder is starting to decay into anxiety. They've lost wireless contact with the base and have only a half hour before they have to turn back. We're looking down from the front of the roughly single-file ranks of the Prodigium team. From our position, we can just barely make out a shape, diving out of one watery wall, slashing across the rear agent, and disappearing back into the opposite wall. The rest of the party doesn't notice. Then, from the opposite side, it happens again. We cut sharply to Hunter waking up in their bed in the RV, as if startled by something. They step out of the RV onto the beach, where Lavelle and a few nondescript agents are working at makeshift computer terminals. Hunter approaches Lavelle.
Have they found anything?
Unclear. We lost contact about an hour ago. Some kind of interference is blocking both their digital and radio communicators. It could mean they found the lagoon. Hunter doesn't seem convinced. They wander off into the center of the ring of sigils where the egg sac lies on a bed of smooth sand containing only 2 black eggs. Then, slowly, a third egg inflates inside.
Oh, no.
Cut back to the tunnel, where only 3 Prodigium agents remain alive, including our friend Givens. They stand back to back, rifles at the ready, just barely maintaining a soldier's calm. Unseen by them, a shadowy shape swims in the water around them, just inside the tunnel walls. It glides up and over them, then dives down from the water above. On the way down, 2 of its webbed hands grasp an agent's head and violently snap its neck. At the beach, Hunter runs to Lavelle.
Get them out of there.
What happened?
It's the creature, the ferryman. He's killing them all.
Of the 2 remaining agents, one of them makes a break for it, running in the direction of the shore, to hell with the symbols underfoot. The creature rises from vivisecting his latest victim, then back to the other survivor, Givens. Givens carefully backs away, avoiding the symbols in the sand as best he can. The creature looks back at Givens and growls, but knows the symbols in the sand between them. He turns around and sees a clear path between himself and the fleeing agent where the protective symbols have been kicked away. He lets out a satisfied snarl and gives chase. With no other direction to go, Givens proceeds forwards, deeper into the tunnel, watching his step along the way. He walks down the tunnel alone for miles. Eventually, we see Givens look up ahead of him as his face becomes illuminated by some unknown blue-green light source. He looks into the light, and his face softens. His eyes tear up.
Dad?
Givens extends a hand out in front of him. We see an arm reach back towards him, but it's covered in blood and lacerations. We pull back and see that Givens is standing across from a man in a torn-up U.S. Navy flight suit, its helmet caved in around the man's head. The hands of Givens and the airman finally touch, and Givens, who seems otherwise paralyzed, sobs tears of joy. The light on his face intensifies. It's clearly shining from above now, shifting from cool blue to a warm golden orange. He looks up and sees that the light is shining through the ocean above. It's the sunrise. We hear a rushing of water as the tunnel ahead caves in like a pipe has just been opened on the far end. The water roars up behind the airman. Givens sees it ahead of him and doesn't move. His face squeezes taut with the overwhelming emotion. The water hits Givens with the force of a speeding train.
Damn. R.I.P.
It's daybreak back at the beach. The mouth of the tunnel collapses. Hunter, Lavelle, and the rest of the nearby agents rush to the shore as a wave of water rushes out. As the tide pulls back, they stop dead in their tracks. Something has washed up on the shore. Hunter looks down in horror to see 6 bodies in the sand, each of them mangled into the shape of a letter. Hunter. In the harsh light of day, Hunter sits in the sand leaning against the RV, head in their hands. Lavelle approaches, casting a shadow over them. Hunter speaks without looking up.
It's my fault. I felt the scale was drawing me into the tunnel. I knew I was supposed to go in there and I ignored it. But you don't know what it's like to have been to that place and then left. I was so hopeless, so scared, so alone. I didn't know who I was. The fact that I haven't been there in years, that means something. I couldn't bear the idea of going back there willingly, and now those agents are dead because of me.
Agreed. Hunter looks up, dead-eyed.
Indrid would at least pretend to be a human being.
We don't all have the luxury of empathy, Marin. I knew the risks when I sent those men into danger, as did they. And now we know something we didn't know before. We know what the ferryman wants. Hunter lets out a long, tired sigh.
I have to go in tonight.
Yes, but you won't be going alone. Later, another helicopter arrives, naturally just as Hunter has finished fixing the symbols on the beach. We are introduced to each of its passengers via voiceover from Lavelle. This is a little facile, and I don't know that I'd really do it this way, but we got to move this pitch along, so here we go.
I love the spirit.
I've spent the past 24 hours assembling a specialized team of Prodigium agents to escort you to the Black Lagoon. First off the chopper is a broad-shouldered, movie star handsome Indian man with a well-oiled beard, perfectly coiffed hair, and a smug facial expression, played by RRR's Ram Charan.
Yeah, we're getting the RRR boys in this.
He's dressed in military fatigues. Agent Chandra Mahajan from Prodigium Special Ops. He's no mere bodyguard. If any mortal can hold his own against the ferryman, it's him.
Yeah, right.
As Chandra steps out of the helicopter, the man behind him is a striking contrast, a stout white academic in his 70s, portrayed by legendary character actor Stephen Root.
You finally, I can't believe it took this long.
Needed the right role, that's all. He wears thick glasses and has already sweat through his shirt. Beyond its mystical and tactical importance, this tunnel through the ocean is a unique opportunity to study marine life, so our resident marine biologist, Dr. Willis Franks, has asked to join the expedition. The final passenger is a black woman in her 20s dressed in a white lab coat over a black bodysuit. She's played by Jamie Lawson, who you might remember as the mayoral candidate in The Batman.
I don't.
Well, she's also in How to Blow Up a Pipeline. The Black Lagoon is a place between life and death, so we've called in our leading thanatologist, Dr. Charisse Auberjonois. She may be young, but she knows more about death and dying than almost anyone alive. Hunter and Lavelle watch Charisse disembark from a distance, far enough from the helicopter that they can hear each other speak.
You want me to lead a group of strangers into almost certain death?
No, Mix Marin. I'll be leading the team. Cut to a tented area by the shore where the team, Hunter, Chandra, Charisse, Lavelle, and Willis, are outfitting themselves with flashlights, scanners, and other useful equipment that I'll fill in later if I need to set something up. Charisse reaches for an assault rifle, but Chandra shakes his head.
I wouldn't bother. Guns have no effect on the creature from the Black Lagoon.
We don't know if that's the only thing out there. You're in charge of our security. You don't think we should bring any weapons? Chandra smirks.
I am all the weapon we'll need.
Chandra proceeds out of the tent towards the beach. Charisse is impressed by his confidence, but still loads a magazine of ammunition into her rifle. On the opposite corner of the tent, Willis is strapping a comical amount of equipment to his back. Lavelle is not amused. You're certain you're up for this, Dr. Franks? We can't let you slow us down. Don't worry about me, young lady. I wouldn't miss this for anything. Please, though, if you don't mind, I'd rather you kept my personal history to yourself. Everyone here has got secrets, Doctor. Outside, the sun dips under the horizon and the ocean stirs. We once again watch the Earth's watery blanket wrinkle up, creating a tunnel about 15 feet in diameter. The team lines up in front of it. Hunter pulls the scale out of their pocket and examines it in their palm. Lavelle is the first to step towards the tunnel. The rest of the team follows close behind. Hunter hasn't quite willed themselves to move yet. Charisse turns back and waves them over. Come on, Hunter. We can't do this without you. Hunter looks up, squeezes the scale tight in their hands, and walks into the tunnel. End of Act 1.
I see. Okay. So we have addressed the bubbles.
Yes, I used that as my setup.
How long did it take you to get to the tunnel part of it?
Oh God, I have no idea. I mean, that was it, by the time I wrote like the first act, I had that there was going to be a tunnel.
Okay.
So it did not. But I had to start there. So anything that was going to come up after this had to come directly from that.
I like a lot of the stuff that's going on here. I like the tropical setting. Again, getting us in the lagoon in a place we haven't been before. Although we were in a Florida beach, but this feels a little different.
Credit to Frankie, our friend and member of the Discord, who I asked for locations that they'd been on vacation in the past because they'd been all over the place for things that might be locations that we might not have seen before.
Yeah.
And they actually gave a more specific specific and interesting New Zealand location that I thought I was going to use. And then because I ended up throwing in the whole beach water tunnel thing, I threw that out. But still, it
turns out a thing about cinematic universes, I've been having the same thing with Van Helsing, just figuring out new places to go.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, especially with Van Helsing, like it'd be like, oh, well, we should go to a vampire castle. No, we just spent all of Invisible Man's revenge in Dracula's castle.
There could be vampire castles everywhere, and there should be, Dalton.
But it would feel repetitive. I'm like, I have a Van Helsing movie, and I feel like I can't go to a vampire castle. I got to figure out other places.
It's also hard because, like, and I kind of did cheat and do this in this movie, but like, if you're going to go to a location, you feel like you should learn something about it and really use it. Like I spent a lot of time reading about Cairo and watching YouTube videos about Cairo for Heaven's Gate. I did not have time to do digital location scouting for this script.
I like the expansion of the lagoon lore in that now we have this tunnel, we have new sigils, we get some fun stuff with the creature in the water tunnel. I like that the creature is calling to Hunter. We have like a good central kind of conflict here. And, Hunter, for very good reason, doesn't want to go back to the Black Lagoon because being able to go to the Black Lagoon means being close to death. And Hunter has gotten away from that, And Hunter, as the keeper of the Black Lagoon, sort of maintains a place of safety that is now being threatened. The one part of this that I'm having trouble wrapping my head around is the tone given the sort of militarization of the franchise.
Okay. Here's where I want to address that right away.
Okay.
I want this to feel like Annihilation.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a pretty obvious influence here. I did not pick
Sure.
Alex Garland as my director because he already made Annihilation.
Yeah.
But the idea of that, like, we have this institution here, and we have a little bit of that, like, we have like our little bit like people getting off the helicopter, and you can kind of in your head, if you so desire, it will not be what I do. Hear like a da da dun, da da dun, like your fucking Michael Bay movie score there. But that's not actually the vibe that I'm gonna want it to necessarily have. I think that probably does read that way as it is right now.
Well, yeah,
but I want it to be more spooky.
Yes, and I think you can do that. It's such a change from, obviously, the first one, Hunter's a child.
Yeah.
But it's a very quiet, lonely kind of film. It's about isolation, as all my scripts are. But like the only other characters are like this lonely old man in the woods, or like Hunter's friend Robbie. And, it's kind of much more, it doesn't feel like we're dealing, we sort of talk about The Mummy, like, what we didn't like about Prodigium is like having someone in charge,
right.
sort of being involved. And it's just sort of tip the scales in, I know, a way that you're probably going to subvert, but it's just, and it's not even bad for the movie. It's just a little bit of whiplash from where we were in the first movie to then suddenly have like a squad of experienced experts going into the lagoon. But
Fair enough.
That's kind of what a sequel's for.
You kind of want to go bigger in some way, and especially since like I do not have the depth of connection with Hunter that you have.
Sure.
I wanted to create an ensemble with which I could play with maybe a narrower spectrum of themes for that character than put through the prism of a couple of other characters.
And also, I think one of your strengths, as we've seen in the Dark Universe so far, is the sort of adventure story setup.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you were really good at in The Mummy Heaven's Gate, which is like feeling like, oh yeah, we've got like this team of like diverse, not just diverse like people with diverse identities, but diverse skill sets. And like everyone's coming together to like face this threat, and there are conflicting personalities. And I think that's kind of your bread and butter is the putting the team together, like the Ocean's 11 kind of thing.
I like that
which
stuff,
is good.
right?
Yeah, you're really good at it.
And like this is one of my less talky scripts. I mean, not necessarily yet, but coming ahead, I think is generally less talky. I don't know if that. Let's say it is. But, your stories are frequently about isolated individuals exploring themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I need that because so much of my voice is about dialogue.
You like a lot of people that can bounce
I like the
off
interplay.
each other.
I like them. I like to play. I like to volley,
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to give Hunter a group of characters off which to play who would also play off of each other. And hopefully, as the story gets progresses, you'll get an idea of why each one of them is there and what it has to do with Hunter's story.
I'm definitely still along for the ride. That was the only thing that was just like, oh, this is so much different. Like, I really love everything else going on. I can see this being polarizing for fans, where some people might be like, oh, good. Like, Hunter is now surrounded by people. We can see more of their personality. We can see them bouncing off people. And then some people might be like, no, this is about the long, dark tea time of the soul.
Right. Well, I mean, let me clarify something right up here at the top. I kind of don't think the Black Lagoon should have a sequel to begin with.
Sure.
We accepted the challenge that we were going to do this.
Yeah.
Right. And our whole podcast is based on the conceit of that this is a bad idea.
Yes.
And then we've ended up working back around to that we like it now.
Yeah.
Right. But there are certain things where I'm working on this. And I think one of the reasons why I have no ideas is like, first of all, this is not a movie that unless you put it in front of my plate, and put it on my plate, put it in front of me and say, write this, that I would write.
Which is basically what we did.
Yeah, I would not write a sequel to The Black
Yeah.
Lagoon because it's not personal to me in the way that it is to you. And so the challenge became, well, you don't have a choice, Dylan. You have to do it. And you have to try and honor it, but you also can't try to tell someone else's story.
Sure.
That's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I had to try and take my favorite traits of your story and try and filter it through my best traits. And hopefully end up with something that's not too much of a compromise.
No, I think this feels like a pretty even mix of those things. Like, I think you've got so much of the original, like, Black Lagoon in here, but you've also got your Dylan Roth-isms in here. And that's not to say that's a bad thing at all. I think that's good.
Yeah,
I think
but hopefully people like Dylan Roth. If you've been
your strengths,
if you've been listening to the show for this long, hopefully you like at least some of the stuff that I do.
Like I said, I think one of my favorite things that you've written is like the first half of Heaven's Gate, where it's like, it really feels like a Christopher Nolan kind of movie where it's just like putting all the pieces and all the people into place. I think that's something you really excel at, and you're doing it here. So I'm very interested to see how the two continue to dovetail or move away from each other.
Let's see how it goes. Let's jump into Act 2. Led by Deputy Director Lavelle, Hunter, Chandra, Charisse, and Willis make their way into the water tunnel, stepping carefully around the sigils in the sand below. Charisse takes a bad step and smudges a symbol. Hunter admonishes her.
Careful. We have to assume those sigils are protecting us from the ferryman.
I'm doing my best. But if we don't pick up the pace a little, then we won't get any farther than the last party did.
Maybe being quick and careless is what got the last party killed.
Lavelle scans the path ahead with a set of binoculars. Most of the symbols ahead still seem to be intact, at least for the next half mile. If the last team got sloppy, we should be able to see precisely where it happened. Still, Charisse is right. We're on a tight schedule. We need to find a way to traverse the terrain more quickly without fracturing the sigils. Chandra steps to the front of the pack.
Let me try something.
Chandra gets down onto his haunches and places one hand down on the sandy seabed. He inhales slowly through his nose, and when he exhales, a pulse runs through his body, down his arm, and into the sand ahead of him. There's a flash and a cracking sound, and instantly the path ahead hardens from wet sand to shimmering glass. The rest of the team steps backward in surprise and awe, except for Lavelle, who simply nods in approval. Chandra takes a cautious first step onto the glass, right onto one of the sigils, and tests its stability. It doesn't crack.
It'll hold.
Chandra grabs a handful of sand from behind him and rubs it into the treads of his boots.
It's slick, but we can use the ridges of the sigils for better grip.
Well done, Agent. Chandra starts walking, now taking the lead. The rest of the party follows. Hunter turns to Charisse.
Did you know he could do that?
No way. I never met any of these people before yesterday. Prodigium's a really big organization, especially since it went public. And anyway, I just joined up. How long you been with them?
About 5 years.
So you were, what, 10 years old when you started?
12.
Wow. So you've only ever really done this.
I know. You can hardly imagine. How do I get by? Yada, yada.
No, I mean, I can relate. Hunter shrinks back a bit, embarrassed at their standoffishness. Then, curious. But before they can say anything, Willis slips on the glass and Hunter and Charisse have to rush to steady him before he falls on his ass. Willis breathes a sigh of relief and mops his brow for the umpteenth time. Oh, thank you, ladies. Hunter shrugs Willis off of them.
I'm not a lady. What about this is giving lady?
Please, pardon me, Hunter. I'm just an old man coping with a new world of gods, monsters, and, new kinds of people.
We're not new. We've been here the whole time. You just refuse to acknowledge us. And by the way, what exactly is a marine biologist doing working for Prodigium?
Oh, I was with Prodigium since long before I got my PhD. I started here young as a contractor, much like yourself, Hunter. Eventually, I chose to pursue other fields, but the company kept me on retainer in case they ever found a mermaid or something like that. This shuts everyone up for a moment.
Okay, but they haven't, right? There's no mermaids?
Well, in science, it's hard to prove a negative. They could still be out there.
Sorry, Roxanne.
From the front of the group, Chandra signals a halt. Then he kneels down again and presses a hand to the glass below. The symbols ahead are interrupted, and there are flash-frozen footfalls in the glass.
This is where the danger begins. The first team faced some threat here. There was panic, and the sigils were broken.
Hunter steps forward to join Chandra.
If you turn the glass back into sand, I can try redrawing some of them. That's not how my power works. Well, how does it work?
As if sensing something, Chandra slowly stands up and gestures for Hunter to get behind him. Charisse speaks. I think we're about to find out. The air and water vapor around Chandra begins to sizzle with heat. Hunter steps back, falling into Charisse, who catches them. The entire team steps further away from Chandra as the heat around him grows. The surface of the water tunnel begins to steam and boil. Something is advancing towards us in the water with incredible speed. Totally focused, Chandra turns an eye towards the water wall to his left. His right fist glows hot. With no target in sight, he swings a furious right cross just as a scaly green humanoid with webbed hands and sharp teeth dives out of the wall towards him. Chandra's punch lands squarely on the creature's jaw. Its head bounces once on the ground, smashing the glass and sending a small shard upward to scratch Chandra's cheek. He doesn't flinch. From the ground, the creature rolls onto his back and makes a brief, direct eye contact with Hunter. He roars, and then, as quickly as he appeared, the wounded creature leaps through the opposite wall and back into the ocean. Chandra takes slow, heaving breaths, and the air cools down around him. His tunic is still sizzling, and parts of it have burned clean off. He turns back to the team, and they get a first look at his Olympian physique.
Everyone all right?
Charisse blushes and lets out a low whistle. Willis is also awestruck, but not by Chandra. He steps forward to the impression in the glass left by the creature's head. My lord, that was him. The Ferryman. Lavelle turns to Hunter. Hunter, can you verify?
Yeah, that was him.
Hunter directs their next question to Chandra.
Want to explain to me what you just did?
Lavelle interrupts. Later. We need to cross this gap in the protective sigils before the creature recovers its nerve. Let's move! The party starts rushing across the glass floor below, which is slicker than anything they've traversed so far since the sand has been smoothed out. They've got to cross about 100 meters before they're back to presumably safe territory. Chandra remains at the head of the pack, the most sure-footed of the bunch, but the rest aren't far behind. That is, until Willis takes a bad step and slips backward, landing on his oversized backpack like a turtle on its shell. He cries out. Hunter and Charisse look back, but Lavelle urges them on. Leave him! Hunter looks up and sees that the creature is swimming above them, making his way towards the fallen Willis. Before they can make up their mind to whether or not to go back for him, Lavelle grabs their arm and pulls them forward. At the same time, Charisse runs past them in the opposite direction, making a break for Willis.
Charisse, no!
It's a race between one human being on unsure ground and one aquatic monster in its home waters. As he struggles to his feet, Willis tries to wave Charisse off. Turn back! I'll be all right. Get back to safety. Charisse ignores him. She slides across the glass, hooking an arm around Willis and using him as a pivot point. She redirects her momentum and starts pulling the downed man to his feet, then starts running towards the rest of the team, who now waits at the perimeter of the protective sigils. Above them, the creature is about to pounce out of the water.
Hurry!
Charisse pushes Willis ahead of her and shoves him forward, sacrificing her own footing. Willis gets pushed past the sigil perimeter into Chandra's arms. Charisse is only a few steps behind, her hand crossing the finish line just as the creature dives through the ceiling and swipes at her back, cutting a meter-long slash through her coat, bodysuit, and skin. She doesn't scream. She simply falls forward, propelled by the momentum of her run, and collapses lifelessly into Hunter's embrace. Hunter lays Charisse down on her back. There's no life in her eyes.
Oh, shit. Oh, no.
Lavelle pulls Hunter off the body. Chandra, help me turn her over.
What are you doing?
Not now, Mix Marin. We don't have much time. Lavelle and Chandra roll Charisse onto her stomach and lift up the back of her long white coat, revealing the back of her black bodysuit. Connected to the suit, at her lower back, there is a circular metallic node like something you'd see in The Matrix.
What the fuck is that?
Lavelle ignores them. She pulls a syringe out of a pouch on Charisse's belt and pulls off the cover with her teeth. Without hesitation, she sticks the needle into the node on Charisse's back and draws back the plunger, filling the syringe with inky black fluid. Lavelle and Chandra roll Charisse onto her back again, bare one of her arms, and inject the fluid back into her vein. They stand back. Hunter looks on, confused and scared. Willis is finally back on his feet and stands beside them, in tears. She gave her life for me. On the ground, Charisse's eyes fill up with black fluid. Luckily for us, Dr. Franks. Charisse gasps and sits up as if spring-loaded. She coughs up blood and black fluid. She's got more than one to give. Hunter and Chandra help Charisse back onto her feet. She rises. We see that the slash on her back is rapidly healing over. Charisse, still catching her breath, looks over at Lavelle. Thanks. You're lucky I was briefed on your condition. Another minute, and you might have been beyond even your own help.
Okay, now can someone explain this to me?
Here's where it would be great to have a change of scenery, and luckily the ocean floor isn't just a flat, boring yellow brick road. Let's let the party take a breather in the midst of some interesting formation of rocks, ridges, and coral, ordinarily inaccessible to human life. There are things to see, to lean on, etc. The explorers sit eating prepackaged rations and drinking canteens of water. Chandra calls out to Charisse and says, with a smirk,
Do all American women have a metal tube in their backs, or just you?
I'm more metal than most. How about you? Make them all that hot in India? Hunter rolls their eyes.
What exactly is your deal, Chandra? Not that I'm not grateful or whatever. When my parents were in university, they volunteered to be test subjects for a neurochemical experiment. They didn't think much of it at the time. Years later, they had me, a fire starter. I can excite electrons with my mind, spark fires, boil fluids, burn flesh.
So naturally, you got into the hurting people business.
I'm in the protecting people business. And you're welcome, by the way. Do you ever wonder what your life might have been like if you'd been, I hate to use the word normal. It probably would have been boring. I've seen the world, I've fought monsters, and I haven't slept alone since I was 17. I have no regrets.
That brash, fiery charm really works for you, doesn't it? Chandra takes a swig from his canteen.
You tell me.
Charisse laughs. Lavelle smirks. Willis is more interested in watching the sea life around him and drawing sketches in his notebook. Hunter changes the subject.
Okay, what about you, Charisse? I saw you die back there.
Willis is more interested in this conversation, but is too embarrassed and ashamed to comment. He and Charisse make eye contact, and he looks away. You sure you want the whole story? Trigger warnings include death, grooming, gaslighting, and shitty parenting.
I know plenty about shitty parents.
Charisse takes a long drink from her canteen. Before I joined Prodigium, I worked at a private laboratory that belonged to my stepdad, James Foster.
The tech mogul? That's like winning the stepdad lottery.
That's what I thought at first. He was the main investor in my father's pharmaceutical research. Dad was working on this miracle cure, something that would combat the effects of aging, strengthen the immune system, and supercharge the body's capacity to heal itself. He thought he could turn death into a chronic, treatable medical condition. Willis, the camp's other scientist, is suddenly engaged again. Incredible! Can you imagine? You could live forever as long as you kept your insurance paid up. That was the idea. Naturally, James was very generous to our family. We had this beautiful house with adjoining state-of-the-art labs, and my dad was never absent no matter how busy he was with work. James sent us on exotic locations and invited us along on some of his billionaire Playboy adventures. When that terrible earthquake hit Haiti, where my mom's family's from, he personally donated $250 million to the recovery effort. I loved my cool Uncle James. We all did. But that was part of the problem. With all that money and personal attention came big expectations, and my dad's research had hit a major snag. He developed a gene therapy that would allow a subject to generate his miracle cure within their own spinal fluid. But the therapy could only be performed on pre-adolescents. No medical board on Earth was going to allow him to test the procedure on a human child. But I was 8 years old, and I wanted to help. I didn't want us to lose this wonderful life we had. So I let him test it on me.
And it worked.
Yeah, for the most part. My spinal fluid can kickstart healing from most injuries, illnesses, or mortal wounds, put most kinds of cancer into remission, and even counteract the aging process to an extent.
So, you are the key to immortality.
Not quite. The body eventually becomes resistant to the effects of the serum. In our testing, it works on a person roughly 7 or 8 times. James said he could work with that. He planned to market it as the Black Cat.
Because it
Gives you 9 lives, yeah. You say you were 8 years old? This must have happened nearly 20 years ago. How come no one ever heard about this? Word got out that my dad had performed an illegal experiment on his own child. We thought James would be able to protect him, being one of the richest men in the world and all, but they threw the book at Dad anyway. They sentenced him to 15 years in prison. He blamed James, said he was set up. Before he was taken into custody, my father destroyed all of his research, all of his samples, everything he could, except, of course, for me. My mother and I thought he was being selfish, denying the world a miraculous medicine out of spite. I swore to James that I'd pick up the work and reverse engineer what my dad had done to me. I never visited my father, not even after I found out that James and my mother had been having an affair. My mom got a divorce from my dad in prison and married James. James adopted me as his daughter, and like you said, I thought I'd trade it up. Now it was a big house on every continent, a lab at every house, and a staff at every lab who would have my work set up just as I left it at the last place by the time I unpacked my bags. I studied and worked nonstop, got my PhD on my own schedule. It was so all-consuming that I barely even paused when my mom died.
You couldn't save her?
Cherie shakes her head. It happened too quickly, an aneurysm. My serum only works on the living, and I didn't get to her in time. I'm sorry. I could barely even feel it at the time. All I could feel was the pressure, the fear of letting down the only other person left in my life. All I had left was James and my work. It took me years to realize that he'd arranged it that way on purpose. From getting my father sent to prison to marrying my mother and adopting me, it was all about keeping me close to him, keeping me from walking away with his miracle drug.
Do you think he killed your mother?
Hunter's eyes snap to Chandra, shocked by the impertinence of the question. Charisse doesn't flinch. She just takes a bite of her rations, chews it, and when she swallowed it down, replies, I'll never know. He and my father killed each other. No one has anything to say to that. After a beat, Charisse turns to Hunter and asks, So, what's the deal with your parents? Hunter stutters, embarrassed. Before they can answer, Lavelle claps her hands and gets to her feet. All right, story time is over. We need to get moving. Hunter sighs to themselves in relief, saved by the bell. The party continues to press forward, less chatty now that they've gotten the big stuff out in the open. Gradually, we begin to see a blue-green glow in the distance.
Daybreak? It can't be.
It isn't. It's still only 2:45. This must be something else. Hunter, could this be the edge of the lagoon?
I don't know. I've never seen this before.
They keep walking. The light grows brighter as they proceed towards it. Something startles Charisse. A low whisper.
Charisse.
She grabs for her rifle and readies it. Lavelle whirls around. Charisse, report. There's someone here. Everyone scans the area. Nothing. Are you sure you heard someone? I thought I did. It's 3 a.m. It's possible I drifted off for a second. Eyes up, everyone. We can't get anywhere by sleepwalking. Now in Lavelle's ear, we hear a different voice. A child's sing-songy voice. Mommy. She ignores it, as if she hears it all the time. Ahead, the tunnel broadens in both width and height. The party is coming to the end of the road, and at the other end of the tunnel, there is a broad, open cavern with walls of seawater. At its center is a small island, the one last seen in the mummy's hand, bobbing in what appears to be a still, mirror-like body of water. But it can't be water, can it? It's darker and calmer than the ocean around them, and the two fluids don't appear to mix. We pan across the faces of the team as they approach the end of the tunnel and the edge of what we recognize as the Black Lagoon. Lavelle's face is stern with purpose. Chandra, Charisse, and Willis are awestruck. Finally, we arrive at Hunter, who is quaking with fear, a tear running down one of their cheeks. While the rest of the party is looking up at the ocean or across at the island, Hunter's eyes are cast down at the reflective waters of the lagoon. Staring back at them is a child of 12, with long hair, a cotton dress, and Hunter's face, with the same tear tracking down their cheek. Hunter falls to their knees. Before the rest of the party can come to their aid, the reflection dives forward through the surface of the water and grabs Hunter by the shoulders. Hunter screams, and the reflection, now a flesh and blood child whose hair is soaked flat, screams right back at them. Charisse, startled, pulls her rifle off her back and trains it at the stranger, while Chandra steps forward and readies a red, glowing fist. But Lavelle dives in front of both of them and cries out, "Wait! It's a child!" The child sees the rifle and screams an unearthly scream. With impossible strength and speed, the child retreats into the water, pulling Hunter in with them. After an initial splash, there are no more ripples, bubbles, or signs of struggle. Hunter and their strange reflection are gone. And here's where we'll take our break.
Okay, there's a lot to talk about. Should we do it before or after the break?
Let's do it now, and we'll come back right into the show.
So, A of all,
Yes.
is Firestarter Dark Universe eligible?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, it
the most
is.
recent one was Blumhouse, right?
Yes, and they actually, I think, were both Universal.
Okay.
So Chandra Mahajan, Charlie McGee, I've just pulled the complete turn on there.
Okay.
So yes, we have
Stephen King.
our first
Is this
Stephen
our first
King
Stephen
character, I believe, in our canon.
Until we get Fast and Furious meet
With
Christine.
Christine, yeah.
This is our first Stephen King character. And then of course, Charisse is from The Black Cat with Merritt K.
Yes.
How much? I haven't re-listened to that episode in a while. Did you keep really the bulk of? Is everything in that episode still canon?
Everything in that episode is still canon, but because
Great.
I expanded on it so much, I wanted to put it all here because, like, maybe if we had The Black Cat to watch, I wouldn't have to put that whole backstory in.
I would say the backstory was a little lengthy,
runs a little long,
and it's
yeah.
pretty detailed.
And you know what? Not all of that's going to be important. But the thing is
Yeah.
that because this is now filling in a gap of a movie that does already exist in our canon, I decided to leave that whole backstory in so
Yeah.
that we have it. It probably wouldn't be in the movie.
in the movie, we would keep it to the most relevant details.
Yeah,
the
because you
Nine
could
Lives
refer
thing,
back to
yeah.
something. So,
Yeah.
But because that pitch was really cool and really good, and I really like
Yes,
it. But
everyone really loves the Merritt.
But we
pitch, yeah.
didn't get super specific into how it worked or what the relationship was.
Yeah.
So I decided to basically summarize the backstory of the character as I understand it, fill in a lot of the details, so that now that we have a firmer base to work with for the character.
Yeah.
And I cast an actor who I think is cool.
Yes. Had we not cast that one before?
No.
Okay.
we off mic talked about Io Debris.
But it wasn't in the episode?
But it wasn't in the episode,
'cause
which
I remembered
allowed
it being
Kendra to
Io.
use Io
Io.
in The Thing That Couldn't Die.
That's right. Io
So-
ended up being, so we can't have it be Io.
Yeah, but I actually like this casting better. The thing about her that knocked me out is I'm looking for an actor who's in her late 20s. And she's like 28 and convincingly played a candidate for mayor in a movie. That's the energy I'm looking for.
Yeah.
This is somebody who is young but does not be... There's like, she's obviously youthful, right?
Yeah.
But also just has a maturity to her that you kind of forget that she's young.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the perfect fit.
Yeah. I like so much that's going on here. I really like Hunter looking into the lagoon and seeing their pre-transition self. That's very effective. And then getting pulled into the water by her, by Rita, I guess.
In my script, I've just been using young Hunter and they.
Yes, I mean that's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
But to Hunter, it's going to be an entirely different person.
Yes,
basically,
and we'll
looking
certainly
back.
be approaching that idea.
And I really like that. I'm really torn on the tone, and I think it's going to be divisive. And I'm trying. The other thing is, like, whenever giving feedback, like, I think it's important to give feedback within the story that's in front of you, right?
Right.
Like, there's no version where I'm going to be like, this should be an entirely different story.
Well,
It's like,
that's a problem I run into as a film critic a lot of the time, which is you have to review the movie that's in front of you.
Yeah.
You cannot be comparing it to a movie you made up.
yes,
Obviously, when things are part of a series, it gets a little tricky because you think of what is essential.
yeah,
But what we tend to do in our series with every sequel is to reinvent,
Yeah.
is to go with a twist. So like I said, I wanted to keep the things from your script that I thought I could do well. The more as I tried to think of like a smaller, more solitary story,
mm-hmm.
and things do get weirder and more like I'm splitting the party very soon, right? So,
I think my biggest issue so far is that the implementation of the fire starter stuff feels a little superhero-y.
a little bit.
It doesn't feel like, from the moment he sort of manifests his powers, it didn't feel, we have a lot of magical characters,
Mhm.
but this felt like Mortal Kombat, or this felt like Homelander, or this, like, it feels very, especially like him actually, like,
Throwing a punch
a
and landing
person
it.
punching the creature from the Black Lagoon feels of a different tone than what we've seen with the creature
Yeah.
before.
Chandra is... I will admit that Chandra is sort of a character that has the hardest time fitting into this movie.
Yeah. He's a little broad.
Yeah, and I don't know if he'd survive the next draft. I feel like there would be a very different version of the character, or maybe a different character there altogether.
I almost wonder if it would be interesting, in sort of the vein of Firestarter, if he was a child.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe even like a little girl.
I think that might be good. The problem was that I started out with I want Ram Charan to play their bodyguard.
I mean, Ram rocks.
And then probably because his motif in RRR is fire,
yeah.
that got me thinking about, like, a lot of this script, I've been thinking about what characters I might want to use, because especially when I was struggling to come up with my own ideas for this, you encouraged me to leverage characters that we dropped, or universal properties we hadn't touched, right?
Yeah.
So I did a couple of things, and there used to be actually some more. I was originally, the role of Lavelle was going to be played by the character that we met very, very briefly in the flashbacks of Jekyll Hyde, who was Hyde's wife.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't end up being that character.
Yeah.
And I also was thinking that this, I wanted, but the idea of it being a fire starter from Firestarter,
Yeah.
actually grew from the idea of, I want this character, this Ram Charan character. I didn't want it just to be I wanted a mystical bodyguard of some kind.
My pitch for the second draft would be make Firestarter a little girl.
Yeah.
Because then it almost sort of foreshadows Hunter seeing their pre-transition self in the water, and also Hunter would be very protective of this little girl, because Hunter is reckoning with the fact that their entire life has been tied to the lagoon, and now here's a little girl coming in who is now also about to be thrown into the lagoon, kind of thing. Hunter gets protective of her, but then finds she can protect herself because, oh, wow, this is not just a normal little girl. This girl has powers and can turn the sand to glass and stuff. And yet she's still vulnerable in a way that like an adult man doesn't feel in this
I like that a lot better
environment.
because I'll also say that Chandra ended up being the character who, as the themes of this story developed and changed as I was writing, has the least to do with Hunter's journey. And this makes that character really much... I like this read a lot, and I wish I'd thought of it. So it's the kind of thing where, like, I don't know that we can declare that that's canon now.
Sure.
We'll see how we feel at the end of the story. But it is... The fact that he's currently a square peg is not lost on me, and definitely feels like a relic of an earlier version of this story. And I like the idea of it being a girl. Hell, we don't even have to change the name because Chandra is a gender neutral forename. So
and because on the other side, obviously we don't know Willis's whole deal yet, I don't think. But there's a bit of him kind of standing in for Hunter's mother in the way that he is not super accepting of, you know, the non-binary stuff at first.
I think he follows into what I kind of, and maybe it's me being optimistic, is the majority of people who don't get it purely don't get it.
Yeah.
And don't even necessarily object.
Sure.
I was on a...
Which I think is Rita's...
Sure. Like,
Rita's mom, I say, because that's what...
Sure, but when we knew
Hunter's
Gabrielle,
mom,
yeah.
Hunter's mom wasn't transphobic. They just didn't get it and didn't get Hunter, you know?
So, I mean, it's the kind of thing where, like, you know, I've been in... Everyone's, especially people, obviously, if I'm in this conversation, I'm the third wheel of this conversation. The people who are having it might have obviously much more experience with it. But, you know, you've been in a conversation with somebody who has been informed that their child uses different pronouns now and just can't stick it. Just can't do it. And there's no malice. It's just, they just haven't committed to it.
It's that Spider-Man meme where it's her pronouns are they, them. Or
okay, Ricky, I get you. Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that the parent does not accept that kid or that they hate this idea. Yeah. It's just they're not putting in the work.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that doesn't make it not painful.
And so
but it doesn't necessarily make the character like a villain immediately in our eyes.
So that makes Willis fit in with Hunter's journey. And Charisse, of course, has this relationship to death that no one else has and can be brought back to life, which ties into the lagoon and the metaphysics of it. So yeah, I think Chandra... again, it feels a little Human Torch right now, which doesn't just feel at odds with this movie, but kind of feels at odds with the dark universe as we've established it.
So it's the kind of thing where, like, I had the idea of, I like Flash frying the sand, and I like this. Also, I ended up cutting it because it was not serving the rest of the story. But in Firestarter also, Charlie also has a little bit of precognition. Which was actually becoming an obstacle in the movie, so I cut it. But that was going to be one of the reasons why he was able to just like throw a punch, and there he was. But yeah, it doesn't fit. Like when I'm thinking of Hideo Kojima, I think that about Kojima's ability to put these crazy comic book elements into the middle of like there's a lot of comic book elements in Hideo Kojima's stuff, but the fact that you can do very serious drama and then the craziest shit you've ever seen happens, and then we're right back to talking about how horrible war is and reading a long monologue about the fucking military-industrial complex.
I almost picture the punching scene, if we were going to redo it with the little girl, like she just puts her hands up to the wall of water and superheats it, and the creature comes close
and
but then
gets
stops.
Scared away.
Yeah, just like can't come closer because it's too hot. And that also, I think, protects the creature a little bit. It's almost like you don't want to nerf the creature by having him get like punched into the glass, you know, like we want to kind of maintain the
sure. Now you did have the creature get fucked up in a fight with Imhotep.
That's true.
I did listen back to that whole section of the mummy's hand.
Maybe I'm being hypocritical here.
I mean, you kind of put a little bit of the superhero action for there. Obviously, a story with a different tone.
Yeah.
But the sort of superhero action stuff with the creature does exist there.
I also think that
he loses.
The creature getting fucked up by Imhotep and a bunch of demons feels different than Rom specifically, because Rom also looks like a superhero.
Yeah.
Like he just like a big handsome guy doing like a Hadouken to the creature.
And of course, because like I have my weird specific baggage is even as a person who is not like does not measure an attraction to men. feels so much more comfortable sexualizing male characters.
Yes.
So of course, like his shirt burns off.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But you got Ram Charan. You got to do it.
Everyone should watch RRR.
If you haven't, go out. It still plays in theaters. They still haven't released it on disc. Also, probably
isn't it on Netflix though?
Yeah, but it's
the wrong language.
But it's the wrong language. It's a Hindu dub. Also, be aware that it's whether or not it's kind of understandable in our cultural context has some.
It may be politically problematic.
It may be politically problematic, but
again,
God
in a way
damn,
that
it's a
we
good
don't
cinema.
really understand.
Yes, I will not pretend to understand it.
But anyway, let's go to break. We'll come back and we'll finish Act 2. Here's a little clip from our most recent bonus pod where we continued Trek's education and I watched Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. We also talked Planet of the Apes movies. We talked Before Sunset. We talked George Miller movies. So here's a little clip from that and we will be right back. I feel like the promise of Star Trek is this whole, space, the final frontier. There is an infinite universe out there full of possibilities and crazy worlds and wonders and danger and just anything you can imagine. But we're going to be on a ship and we're going to be in the same 5 rooms and we're going to sit in these chairs and we're going to look at it out there. And you're going to trust me that there's something cool out there, but all the aliens look like humans, whether they're Klingon, like everybody's humanoid. And maybe we'll talk to them over a view screen. Maybe someone will come join us in our little workplace. But I don't know. Yeah, everything I've seen so far, even like the episodes you've shown me, which, I've enjoyed as much as any other Star Trek thing, it's just they're on the ship the whole time. And I don't know what Earth is like. I don't know what the Federation is like. It's like, I feel like, yes, space is the final frontier, but I have to look at it from the basement. Like, I'm locked in the basement. Welcome back to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe? You just heard a clip from Are You Afraid of Dylan and Dalton, our bonus podcast that you can get by subscribing at the Patreon at patreon.com/Dylan and Dalton. If you're only listening to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe, you're only getting half the story.
Well, I mean, you're
That's
getting all of the story, but you're missing out on some fun stuff.
You're missing out on some good
And just as
combo.
importantly, you're missing out on the Dylan and Dalton Discord, which is one of the most delightful places to spend your day on the internet.
But we know not everyone is looking for another internet community and can't keep up with Discord. So if you're just looking for another reason, there's a bonus pod. And of course, other bonuses. But anyway, let's get back to Return to the Black Lagoon, picking up in the middle of Act 2.
Lavelle, Chandra, Charisse, and Willis stand at the bank of the Black Lagoon, having just seen Hunter pulled into its depths by a reflection of their younger self. Chandra steps forward into the water, expecting a shallow decline like a natural body of water. Instead, the ground ends exactly where the water begins, like an in-ground pool. Chandra falls forward, dropping into the water, making no splash at all. Charisse reaches out for him, but it's too late. Chandra! To her surprise, she hears someone call back to her, not from ahead of her, but from above. It's a scream muffled by water. Charisse, Lavelle, and Willis look up at the source of the sound and see Chandra floating in midair, upside down, clutching at his throat. He reaches down, or up, at the rest of the party in desperate agony. Oh my God, he's drowning! We cut to Chandra reaching up desperately at the shoreline above, where the rest of the party looks up at him in horror. Chandra strains, trying to spark up a fire around himself. It doesn't seem to be working. Below/above in Chandra's reflection in the surface of the lagoon, we can see another Chandra, the water simmering around him from the heat. But this other Chandra is not alone. There's a figure in front of him with his hands around Chandra's throat, a figure outlined in flames. On the shore, Lavelle thinks quickly. She drops her backpack and retrieves a long rappelling rope with a hook on one end. Stand back. Lavelle spins the hook and then throws it up in the air in the direction of Chandra. He reaches for it, but it falls short. She reels it back in and tries again, but she can't reach him. He's rising higher and higher as if sinking. God damn it! Lavelle pulls the hook back again and slips it through her own belt loop. She hands the other end to Willis. Don't drop this. Lavelle takes a running start and dives into the water. Once again, there is no splash, and she totally disappears beneath the surface. More and more of the rope is pulled underneath. Willis holds tight, and Charisse picks up a length of the rope to add her weight and strength just in time for the rope to pull taut. They look up at Chandra, waiting for Lavelle to appear. Finally, she swims into view. The rope extends from her waist to the edge of the water on the opposite shore. Lavelle swims closer and closer to Chandra, who, from her perspective, is alone. She reaches for him, but the water around him is too hot. The skin on her fingertips blisters before she can touch him. She recoils. Chandra screams, reaching for Lavelle, then swiping at the air/water in front of him, pounding away at something that we and Lavelle can't see. On the opposite side of the lagoon's reflection, Chandra scalds his fist as he punches at the jaw of the man on fire again and again, each blow weaker than the last. Back on the other side, Lavelle braces herself and then wraps an arm around Chandra and tugs on the cable behind her. The skin on her arm and the side of her chest sizzles and pops. Chandra has stopped moving. On the shore, Charisse and Willis start pulling and watch as their two companions are dragged by the rope, pulled closer to the surface of the water yet further from the people doing the pulling, as if they were on the end of a kite string held by someone on the far-off island. We now change point of view to Chandra and Lavelle, and everything is upside down. Lavelle has her arms wrapped around the unconscious Chandra and is looking up at the surface of the water, through which she can see Charisse and Willis pulling them up. They're pulled closer and closer, and we can even see Charisse reaching her arm into the water from above, but the arm doesn't appear in the water below. It just stops at the waterline. Nevertheless, Lavelle and Chandra are heaved out of the water, both steaming from the heat coming off of Chandra's body. Lavelle's arm and side are scorched, the fabric of her clothing melted into her skin. She puts the motionless Chandra on his back. His eyes are open. He's not breathing. Lavelle heaves on his chest over and over until black sludge and seaweed starts oozing from his mouth. Lavelle, breathless, falls backward onto the sand. Charisse, I need a dose. No one answers. Charisse, hurry! Lavelle looks around, expecting to see Charisse and Willis nearby. She looks around in a panic and finds that the rest of her party are nowhere to be found. She clutches for the cable that had been attached to her belt. It's gone. On the shoreline, Charisse and Willis kneel down at the water's edge, where the end of the rope lies still attached to no one. Charisse looks down at the water, then across at the island. There's no sign of them. Now, our point of view shifts, rotating so that the reflection of the island in the water becomes the real world, and the real world becomes the reflection. Chandra and Lavelle are on the island, but on the opposite side of the mirror.
Very good playing with the lagoon physics.
Thank you.
I like, in my script, we talk a lot about the two sides of the water on either side of the surface, but we never get into what's on the shore on the other side.
I mean, there might not have been a shore, right? I mean, I guess there is technically.
Yeah,
but I like it being mutable anyway. Yeah.
But yeah, like this is, you're now kind of extending the boundaries, which is what we should do in a sequel. And now we've got basically people trapped on opposite sides of the shore. Basically, the entire world is a mirror of the other one. And that's a very cool sort of elaboration on what's in the first one.
Thank you. And as I managed not to say before the break, yeah, Chandra being a square peg kind of made him the obvious candidate to be the first to die. R.I.P. to the very sexy man with the fire powers. That's where I think we'd have to make things a little bit different if we had a little girl in the role. But then again, Dalton,
look,
in
you're
tradition,
talking to me.
We'd just have to drown the little girl.
Yeah, I mean, look,
foremost.
This is a sequel to the Black Lagoon. A child
gets murdered there. Yeah.
A child is gonna die. And raise the stakes for Hunter.
Yeah.
Hunter sees, this little, they couldn't protect her, we might have to make it so that Hunter watches it somehow.
Yeah.
Just like Hunter watches Rob. And then it's a callback for Robbie.
Right, because
Hunter watched, as a 12-year-old, watched their friend Robbie die and couldn't do anything. And now they're forced to see it happen again with this little girl.
That note really works for me. And it's not, the character's gone now, so it doesn't matter whether it's canon or not. But I really do like that idea of
choose your own adventure. Yeah. You can either choose the RRR guy or a little girl.
These are ideas in movies these are ideas of movies and not movies. Therefore, the ideas are mutable.
Yes.
Elsewhere, Hunter wakes up with a start. They're on the hard ground inside a cave. The cave, as a matter of fact, the one in the middle of the island. At the center of the cave floor sits its only light source, a glowing tunnel that burrows deep into the fires of hell. Back through the looking glass into the far shore, where Charisse and Willis are walking the length of the beach. It seems longer than it did when they got here. There is no consistent sense of space or scale. The beach is now lined with dense foliage. Hunter! Chandra! Lavelle? Charisse's voice echoes back to her, but otherwise she gets no response. Willis is nervous, but also awestruck by his impossible surroundings. He takes out a camera with a telephoto lens and tries shooting the off-kilter island across the lagoon. The analog viewfinder works, but the digital previews are dark and distorted. I never properly thanked you for risking your life for me back there. Don't mention it. The stakes are lower for me anyway. I've still got 4 or 5 deaths left in me. Don't undersell your own bravery, Doctor. It takes a lot to be that comfortable with death, especially at your age. Were you? At my age, I mean. Oh, not at all. I was in a dark place back then. It took me a long time to realize that making peace with yourself and making peace with death are basically the same thing. If you can look at yourself and everyone you used to be and be satisfied knowing that's all you're going to be, then nothing can scare you anymore. Charisse and Willis walk past a grove of trees, from which they were observed by a pair of yellow eyes. Back in the cave, Hunter sits up and examines their surroundings. This is the first time we've gotten a good look at this place. In the flickering light of the tunnel, Hunter can make out something unexpected on the cave walls. Paintings. The entire wall is covered in art, with small drawings squeezed in between larger ones like the skin of a tattoo addict. They're all done by the same hand, but obviously not all at the same time. In fact, you can trace the artist's improvement over time as their style evolves from amateurish cartoons to lifelike portraiture. The subjects also vary dramatically. There are abstract shapes and patterns and Escher-esque impossible geometry. There are graphic depictions of gruesome, violent deaths. There are placid life drawings of undersea creatures. Hunter comes across a lovingly detailed portrait of a familiar face. It's Nestor, Hunter's friend and the previous keeper of the Black Lagoon. Hunter smiles. There are dozens of portraits in a similar style, too many to get a good look at. One in particular catches Hunter's attention. It's Hunter themselves, as they appeared when they first met the creature. Hunter looks at it for a moment. Then, displeased, they swipe at it with their open hand, smudging it slightly. Just then, Hunter is startled by a voice from behind them. Hunter? Hunter turns around to see Lavelle standing at the mouth of the cave, one side of her body badly burned.
Lavelle. Oh my God, what happened to you?
Cut to Hunter and Lavelle standing over Chandra's body. Lavelle closes the dead soldier's eyes. He dove in after you.
And you dove in after him. I wouldn't have expected that from you.
You don't know anything about me.
I know you didn't give a flying fuck when 6 of your guys got torn apart.
You don't have the faintest idea of my responsibilities. There's an entire continent that depends on me, and sometimes that means taking calculated risks and making terrible sacrifices. These losses are unfortunate, but a person in my position cannot afford regrets. We move on. Hunter glares at Lavelle, who stands up and starts walking back towards the cave. Come on, let's have a look around. Across the water, Charisse and Willis walk between the water's edge and the thickening jungle. There's a rattling in the brush. Charisse stops and signals Willis to be still. After a moment, Charisse readies her rifle. Stay here. She steps carefully into the foliage. Willis loses sight of her almost immediately. Charisse hears more movement, then a man's voice, rich, baritone.
Reese? Come on out, it's all right.
Charisse takes a swift step forward with her rifle out in front of her. She steps out into a clearing. In the tall grass in front of her stands a waist-high laboratory table. On the table are Fisher-Price kids' toy facsimiles of lab equipment, a computer, a microscope, flasks, and test tubes. At the other end of the table stands a tall, clean-cut white man in a very expensive approximation of regular guy clothes, tech bro chic. This is James Foster, played by John Hamm.
There you are. I was worried about you. You know how I get when I can't find you.
When we pan back to Charisse, we see that she's much younger, around 12. She's still holding the rifle, though it now looks much too big for her. She lowers it. Sorry, Uncle James. I got lost.
It's all right. You're here now. Let's get back to work.
Sure thing, Uncle James. Charisse walks up to the lab table and perches the rifle up against it. She sits and starts fiddling with the toy lab equipment like she's playing make-believe. James puts a hand on her shoulder.
Reese, it's been a year since your mom and I got married. I know it's a big adjustment, but I'd like it if you stopped calling me Uncle James. I know Dad is a big leap, but...
No, I get it.
How about just James for now?
Sure thing, James.
Atta girl. I'll leave you to it.
James gives Charisse a kiss on the top of the head and then walks off into the brush. Charisse watches with a sad smile as he walks away, then looks back into the useless, solid plastic eyepiece of her toy microscope. Willis stands on the outskirts of the jungle. He calls into the trees. Charisse, are you okay in there? He paces the area, then looks up at the oceanic planetarium above. Through the dome of salt water, he can see the luminescent life of the ocean depths, going about their nighttime routines. He hears a rustling in the jungle. He turns toward the sound and sees, standing tall, still, and unassuming, the creature from the Black Lagoon. Willis's eyes well up with tears. So, you do recognize me, even after all this time. I wasn't sure before. That young lady was just about killed trying to save me, but you wouldn't have hurt me, would you? The creature steps slowly towards Willis. He tilts his head to the side, reaches a hand out to touch Willis's chest. Yeah, it's terminal, I'm afraid. The doctors say I might still have a few years, but, well, when the lagoon turned up, I took that as a sign. Willis looks up at the creature. This hunter gal, is she? The creature grunts. Are they?
Good ally, the creature.
Taking good care of you? Are they good company? The creature blinks, flares his nostrils. I see. Well, we all have our time, I suppose. Willis wipes a tear from his eye and laughs weakly. I hope it all works out. But if it doesn't, you'll know where to find me. So long, old friend. The creature bows his head low and presses his forehead against Willis's. His clawed, webbed hand is still on Willis's chest, over his heart. The creature digs his claws into Willis's flesh deeper and deeper and squeezes. Willis wraps his arms tight around the creature and gasps as his heart is crushed inside his chest. He goes limp. The creature cradles Willis's limp body in his arms as he walks across the surface of the black, reflective water. When I was writing, I kind of picked this as my end of Act 2. I haven't really... You can probably tell me at some point where you really think the act break is. But
for now, this is it.
For now, this is it. Let's talk.
Yeah, so am I understanding correct that Willis is a previous keeper of the Black Lagoon?
Yes, and
Probably
I didn't put it in the
before
script
Nestor?
because of the way that we write it. But if you were to look through the bunch of portraits, you freeze frame it on your Blu-ray or whatever in the corner, you would see Willis's portrait. You'd see a young Stephen Root.
Nice. I like that. Are we going to find out more about Willis?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think that you've learned everything you need to know about Willis.
I thought he was going to have some sort of like secret.
The secret was just that why he was here, right?
Yeah.
There was, when I first picked Stephen Root, one of the reasons I picked him is that he's great at playing low status, acting as high status and vice versa.
Yeah.
And he's a guy who is both potentially very endearing and also very sinister. So originally I actually did think that he was going to be the villain of the story. And then as I was writing and discovered really more of what his relationship was going to be to Hunter's themes, and realized that I wanted him to be like this former keeper and have this whole other thing, I ended up moving away from it.
Okay.
And I'm actually kind of glad, especially with the Stephen Root casting. I think it's been a while since he played a guy that the surprise is, no, actually, he's nice. I like him. He's not trying to steal a black man's body or anything.
I think I would like to know more about him. I think there's like why because the keepers are people who end up at the Black Lagoon, through some sort of circumstance. I think maybe there might be some sort of moment. Maybe here's my pitch.
Okay,
I got a pitch.
Okay,
if Willis is sort of our stand-in for Hunter's mom, in a way, right? This older person who may be well-intentioned but doesn't get it and is not trying super hard. There might be a moment where Hunter and Willis connect over whatever it was that brought Willis to the lagoon to begin with. And it helps Hunter soften towards Willis in a way that then at the same time softens them towards their own mother.
Yeah, that is the goal that I had in mind for the character, right?
Yeah.
First of all, of course, this is a 50-page script, and
Sure.
the real movie would be 120 pages. So there's definitely room to expand stuff. The trouble that I ran into is I think I would need a whole other section before the group splits up.
So I have an idea for that too.
Because right now I had the problem of, okay, well, they're walking in a linear path across the ocean. Usually in a road movie, you have more stops. You have more little episodes. And in this particular pitch, there's just not room for me to do that. So I think that I would like there to be, and at some point I described like broad strokes of stuff, and I got rid of it because, we're always trying to tighten up the show. The idea that through Willis, we get a little bit more of the wonder of the surroundings around them and this interaction with sea life. there was a point where I thought that Willis would get swallowed by a whale. And again, so except for Chandra, a lot of the broader stuff got contracted tighter and tighter. But yeah, I like that because that's definitely my goal for the character, right? I want, I got whatever, we're workshopping. All these characters need to reflect back something on Hunter for like the dilemmas that Hunter is feeling.
I think, and this also ties into your question of, is this your end of Act 2? You have a 55-page script here, which is pretty short for you.
For me, yeah.
Pretty short for both of us. I mean, even like Invisible Man's Revenge was like 65. I think Native American Werewolf is 65.
Right. If you were to hand this to somebody as this is a treatment, like, no, it fucking isn't.
Well, no. What I'm concerned about is, are you telling a complete story here?
Okay.
And so far, yes. Like, this has the rhythm of a story. We have a threat, we have a challenge that, and the pace, like we talk a lot about the escalating action in Act 2. You've got that. Now, does it fit a blockbuster Hollywood movie or something?
Well,
not yet.
The Black Lagoon does not fit a blockbuster.
Well, not
Hollywood
blockbuster,
movie.
but does it fit like the rhythm of a Hollywood studio film?
Right.
Not yet.
Not yet. I think that really what it is.
But that's okay.
Sure.
It doesn't need to be that right now. It just needs to be a complete story.
Right. Like this, this one is, like I say, it's like Annihilation is sort of my watchword. A movie I don't even super love, but that in terms of the pace and the tone of it, like, I think the real version of this is significantly longer, obviously.
Yeah. I think what we need is, before we get to the lagoon, here's my pitch.
Okay.
We were talking about like a road movie. We need stops. We're in this tunnel, right? That's going straight through the ocean. The tunnel runs in to a shipwreck.
Ooh, I like that.
And they have to, the only way forward is through the shipwreck. And you can see like the water standing in the halls, so like, it's almost like a Poseidon adventure kind of thing.
Right. And you know what you could do to escalate the threat of that is that the whole of the shipwreck could be intact enough that you can walk past the water wall and you're actually now in the tunnel, but the water is pushing, the pressure is, and then eventually the shipwreck actually cracks and they have to try to get out of the flooded sections.
Yes, yeah.
And that's good.
In that section, we start to tease more of these younger versions. We start to maybe see John Hamm walking in the distance. Maybe we don't see who it is, but like, there's like, we're starting to have these visions to sort of set things up. And at one point, maybe people get a little bit separated and Hunter has to save Willis from something, and they get this heart-to-heart moment where Willis reveals to Hunter that he used to be a keeper and why, his own struggle that sort of made him feel like an alien, made him suicidal. And Hunter then connects with him in a way that, like, he sees that Willis is not the villain.
Right.
And maybe that means their mother is not as well, and sort of allows Willis to serve a more direct functional purpose to Hunter's journey before we get to the lagoon. And that's another big set piece.
It solves Dalton, I love this idea. And it solves a huge problem for me, which is when they were all traveling together, I did not have the opportunity to shuffle the deck and have different characters interact with each other. So I lose that. I ended up having what I ended up having to sacrifice basically was a meaningful moment between Hunter and Willis, because that's just not how the cards got dealt, right?
Yeah.
Like, I split the party at a certain point. Chandra did not always immediately die, and then I realized at this point in the script somebody had to die. And so since I already had that
was
set
great.
base,
Great escalation.
And we now have Hunter and Lavelle, who were paired up in the beginning of the movie, are now paired up again on the island. You had two characters who have an event that ties them together in sort of the rescue earlier in Willis and Charisse having some time together, and then I split the party up again.
Yeah.
So they can have their individual moments. But what I didn't get to do was cross-pollinate, and the shipwreck absolutely allows that to happen. And the one that we need to prioritize in that would be Willis and we also maybe use that as an opportunity to do something with the little girl Chandra.
Yes.
Because I think that could be the opportunity for Hunter to try to be protective of this little girl.
Yes, for sure.
Because
develop their relationship a little bit more.
And that only makes it more painful when the next time they fail.
Yes.
So yeah, that's great. Great note, Dalton.
And it's a set piece. it's if we're gonna be at the bottom of the ocean, let's take advantage of it. Let's find,
I didn't feel like I'd done enough with that because I was so focused on like, again, so much of this happened really fast for me. And it was just like my brain was so stuck, and it only got unstuck in the last couple of days. Because I really did try to get this one started earlier. And I mentioned it on a previous episode that like, I broke ground on this. I know more of what I'm going to do. Most of that's fucking garbage now. But I love that.
So
I love that beat.
We had in the middle of Act 2, shipwreck set piece. And then it strengthens. The thing is, though, it doesn't, you don't have to then rewrite everything that comes after. It
You
just
just add a
strengthens.
little big chunk.
It
Yeah.
strengthens everything that comes after, and that's the point.
Yeah, and in terms of like trying to make a stronger narrative, I have been trying to think of Act 2 as 3 acts.
Yeah.
And then we like the thing that you and I like to do is, the Act 3 sort of has to have Act 3 plus, right? And then you have your denouement. So, I mean, the structure of a Hollywood movie is more complicated than, beginning, middle, and end.
Sure.
So that allows for like a really strong middle to my middle.
Yeah, I think so. Cool. Well, let's see how it all ends.
Okay.
Let's go into Act 3.
Act 3. Hunter leads Lavelle to the entrance to the cave at the center of the island.
This is it. We're back where we started.
And we're no closer to understanding why the lagoon is here in the first place. Lavelle checks her watch. Sunrise is in about 2 hours. We're close to the point of no return.
We need to find Charisse and Willis and get out of here.
Lavelle doesn't answer. She's looking at the cave entrance, which is aglow with the light of the tunnel within. She hears a voice from within, which Hunter does not hear.
Mom?
Lavelle is transfixed, not even hearing Hunter as they call for her attention. She stares into the flickering light and follows it inside. When Lavelle enters the cave, it isn't as we last saw it. In her eyes, it's a hospital room in the children's ward of an Auckland hospital. In the bed lies a 10-year-old boy, Trevor. Trevor looks up at Lavelle and smiles a very tired smile.
Mom.
Hey, honey.
I thought you weren't coming back today.
We see that the news is playing on the TV across from Trevor's hospital bed. The headline reads, Monsters in Manaus, Brazilian city overrun by unidentified creatures. Lavelle doesn't even look at it. Instead, she smiles at her son and sniffs back a tear. No, Trevor, I'm not going anywhere. Lavelle takes a seat next to Trevor's bed and puts his hand in hers. I'll be right here. Trevor looks over at her and smiles, then closes his eyes and rests his head against his pillow. Lavelle strokes his hand with her thumb and watches him sleep. The beeping on his monitors grows slower and quieter, disappearing into echo. Hunter enters the cave, but for them, it's just a cave, and Lavelle is nowhere to be found. In the jungle, young Charisse sits on a tall stool at the lab table, playing with her toys in a very professional manner. She clumsily knocks a test tube off the table, and it rolls onto the floor. When she leans down to get it, she sees her rifle leaning against the table. She pauses, processing the strangeness of its presence. As if on cue, James appears in the room.
Hey, Reese. How's it coming along?
Charisse looks up at James, then back at the rifle. I'm trying to remember.
You look exhausted. Why don't you pack it in for the night? We'll throw a movie on the projector, whatever you want.
Charisse is sweating. She's trying to make sense of it. She grabs the rifle, becoming her adult self. She aims and fires, grazing James's arm. James transforms in an instant into the creature. Charisse's second shot bounces off of his chest and ricochets into a nearby tree. The creature clutches his arm and roars at Charisse, then runs off into the foliage. Charisse chases after him, but he's gone.
You know what this is like? Lost. I'm getting lots of Lost vibes.
Good, I will take that
this.
as a compliment
Yeah.
from you.
You know I love it.
She emerges onto the shore, where she finds a pool of partially congealed blood leading to the water. She kneels down next to it, dabs her finger into it for a closer look. Willis? Willis? Hunter steps back out of the empty cave and calls out.
Lavelle! Lavelle!
A soft, high voice answers from nearby. She's not here. Hunter turns to face the voice. Standing by the water, wearing long hair and a frilly sundress, is Hunter, 12 years old. This is probably the act break. Right?
Who cares?
We'll see. Yeah.
Stop it.
Stop what?
Stop looking like that.
Why?
That's my face, and I want you out of it.
But it's not you. You shed this skin and became someone new. Someone who never visits.
I'm not in that place anymore. I like my life. I like who I am.
You left me alone! You promised you'd take care of me.
I have. I've watched over the lagoon every night. I've put it ahead of everything else in my life.
What else do you have? What else is there? I don't know anything about you. I only know about this. Young Hunter points to their own chest. And this is gone.
You're goddamn right it's gone. I'm glad she's gone, and I'm never going back. I'm never going back there again.
Hunter, you are there right now. Hunter looks around at the otherworldly undersea oasis. Aside from young Hunter, there is no one else in sight, and the far shore looks farther away by the second. Young Hunter takes a step closer to their older counterpart. Hunter.
Stay away from me.
Hunter's cry echoes through the lagoon. From across the water and on the other side of the reflection, Charisse catches wind of it. Hunter recoils from young Hunter's touch.
Get back!
It's time, Hunter.
Don't touch me!
It's time for you to... Something hits young Hunter's chest with a thip. Less than a second later, a shot echoes through the lagoon. Young Hunter puts a hand to their chest. Underneath it, a red stain spreads across their dress. Across the way, Charisse lowers her rifle. She has fired her weapon across the water and through the horizon. A ripple spreads across the surface of the lagoon. Hunter stands agape as their younger self collapses to the ground. Hunter runs to catch them as they fall.
No!
Hunter holds young Hunter's body in their arms. A drop of water lands on young Hunter's face. Hunter looks up. It's raining.
Nice.
Back at the Prodigium base camp, the remaining science team watches in awe as the ocean begins lifting further off of the ground, like a giant blanket being shaken out for crumbs. Drops fly up from the sea as an upside-down rainstorm brews. Thunder cracks. The sound is backwards. On the island, Hunter shakes their younger self, but they're losing consciousness.
No. Wake up!
Behind them, Lavelle comes stumbling out of the cave, disoriented. She's been crying. Hunter? What's going on?
The creature's been shot. He's dying.
How can that be? He's supposed to be bulletproof, immortal.
He wasn't himself.
The rain is getting harder. This place is coming apart.
We need to get him to Charisse.
There's no way across.
Yes, there is. I can show you.
Lavelle hesitates. Hunter, I'm sorry. I saw something in there and I'm not sure I can go on living with the choices I've made.
You have to.
Why? What does it matter to you? Hunter looks down at young Hunter, whose eyes are on Lavelle. Hunter sees this, then turns back to Lavelle.
Because I have a mission for you. Now come on.
Hunter helps young Hunter onto their feet, then takes Lavelle by the hand, leading them to the edge of the water. Hunter takes a step over the waterline and floats above the surface. Lavelle follows, but they fall through the surface and tumble over, becoming a reflection of Hunter and young Hunter's movements. With startling grace, the two bodies, Lavelle and the two Hunters, twirl between the air and the water, crossing the surface in concert. It is the dance performed by Hunter and the creature in the first Black Lagoon. When the dance is concluded, Lavelle and Hunter land gently on the shoreline next to Charisse, with young Hunter in tow.
Charisse, he needs your medicine. Hurry, please.
Charisse whips off her jacket and plugs an empty syringe from her belt. Lavelle, give me a hand! Lavelle takes a syringe and presses it into the node on Charisse's back. Charisse winces with pain as the syringe fills. Hunter lays young Hunter down on the shore and collects the syringe from Charisse. What makes you think this will work on him? He's not human.
He was human enough to get shot.
Hunter finds a vein and presses the needle through. They push the plunger. Hunter, Charisse, and Lavelle stand over the wounded creature as the rain falls. Then, suddenly, a gasp. Young Hunter's eyes snap open and they inhale sharply. The rain slows. Back at base camp, the ocean settles back into its previous shape, with the tunnel, but no other extraordinary movement. At the lagoon, Hunter cradles their younger self's head in their lap.
You're gonna be okay.
The color temperature in the lagoon shifts slightly warmer. Lavelle, Hunter, and Charisse look up. There's a hint of sunlight shining through the ocean. Run. Don't look back. The three surviving humans pull each other onto their feet and bolt for the entrance to the tunnel. The sand beneath them quickly ends and they run across the textured glass that Chandra created on the way in. Each step is a potential disaster, but there's no time. They sprint, grabbing each other for balance when they can. The sun is chasing them home. They reach the gap between the sigils where the glass is too smooth to run over. Without breaking stride, Charisse pulls her assault rifle off her back, sets it to automatic, and aims at the ground ahead. Shield your eyes! Charisse sprays bullets into the smooth glass, breaking it into chunks and revealing the sand below. The party runs over the area with relative ease. Back at the lagoon, the sunlight breaks through the ocean above. Young Hunter stands at the tunnel entrance with their back to the lagoon, as the dome above collapses, flooding the entire space with rushing seawater. It blows past them, unfazed. The water overtakes us, washing out our view of the lagoon, and we see the creature swim past. The sound of rushing water reverberates through the tunnel. It's getting louder. Hunter can just about see the exit ahead.
Don't give up. We're almost there.
Hunter, Lavelle, and Charisse run toward us, the wall of water rushing up behind them. Charisse looks back, her eyes nearly jumping out of her skull. Jump! Everyone jump, now! The three survivors leap into the air just in time to catch a massive wave of water at their backs. The wave sends them shooting out of the tunnel and onto the beach as if from a cannon. They're propelled through the air. Hunter and Lavelle hit the sand hard. Charisse lands on top of one of the tents, whose roof collapses. Her body hits a desk in a computer terminal. Staff rushes to her aid. At the shoreline, the ocean calms, gradually returning to normal. Lavelle struggles to lift herself out of the sand. Someone extends a hand down to her. It's Hunter, a layer of sand over their gear, but otherwise unharmed. Lavelle accepts their help. They turn their attention over to the crowd around the broken tent. Hunter pushes through the crowd of onlookers and finds medics tending to Charisse. She's got a bad gash on her head, and one of her shoulders is badly dislocated.
Charisse, are you all right?
What, this? This is nothing. Remember a few hours ago when I fucking died? They share a laugh. Lavelle strides up behind Hunter and puts a hand on their shoulder. Hunter, when you've caught your breath, I need to be briefed. You made contact with the Ferryman. Did he tell you what this was all about?
I think so. I'm still processing all of this. This much I'm sure of.
Hunter reaches into their pocket and retrieves something. It's the purple scale from off the creature.
I think he wants you to have this. Does that make any sense to you?
Lavelle's hard professional look cracks as she thinks back to her experience on the lagoon. Yes, I believe it does. Lavelle takes the scale and clutches it tightly in her palm. Does this mean you'll be leaving us?
Call it a sabbatical. For you too, I guess. It's a lonely job, but it's basically a vacation compared to what you've been doing. And if the creature is asking for you, I'm guessing you've got a lot on your mind.
Yeah, good guess. Hunter starts walking up the beach towards their RV. Lavelle calls after them. Where are you headed? Hunter answers without turning back.
Somewhere that fucking sucks.
Lavelle laughs. She takes another look at the scale, then pockets it. Cherie joins the Prodigium team as Hunter's RV pulls away. Cut to Hunter on a commercial flight, fidgeting in their seat, nervously chewing gum as the plane lands. They get a Discord notification from Quasimodo. You sure about this? Not too late to just go to Disney World. Hunter types back.
I'm sure. It's past time.
Good luck. Cut to Hunter walking up the steps of a modest but livable apartment complex. The sun is bright overhead in a cloudless Florida sky. Hunter climbs the outdoor steps to the second floor of a building. They stop in front of a door and hesitate before knocking. They straighten their clothes, run their fingers through their short hair. They get ready to knock again. Before they can, the door swings open. Hunter smiles.
Hi, Mom.
Cut to black. Mid-credit scene?
Yes, I have a lot to say, but we'll wait till the movie's over.
Mid-credit scene. Hunter cooks in the kitchen alongside their mother, Gabrielle. They converse in Spanish. Sweet potato tamales for Christmas dinner?
Hey, they turned out pretty good, actually.
Well, this year we'll cook together. Hunter's phone rings on the kitchen counter. They rinse off their hands and pick up in no hurry. The caller is an unknown number.
Hello?
Cuts Lavelle, who is calling from a market in Kathmandu at sunrise. She's holding a wet bag made of seaweed in her other hand. Good morning, Mix Marin.
It's dinner time in Florida, Lavelle. What's up?
I've just paid a visit to our mutual friend.
And how's the big guy doing? He murder any more of our friends lately?
Lavelle looks down into the seaweed pouch. No, in fact, he seems to have the opposite on his mind lately. He gave me something to send to you. I don't know what they are, but they come with very specific instructions, so listen carefully. Cut to the funeral of Carol Lemley. Carol's body lies in a coffin in a viewing room. Hunter digs into their pockets and places 2 small green emeralds on Carol's eyelids, then a wooden ankh sideways across her lips. They close the coffin lid. The invisible man, Jack Griffin, voice of John C. Reilly, stands beside them in a black suit. Why did you do that?
Protection.
Cut to black.
Post-credits scene.
Oh, we're going to go right into it?
Let's go right
Let's
into
do
it.
it.
Post-credits scene. The camera is zoomed in close on the ground of hell. It looks like burnt, blistered flesh, charred except for where it cracks, revealing pink and white raw flesh that sizzles in the hot air. Blood drips from somewhere above the frame, but as soon as it hits the meaty earth, it evaporates. We zoom out to see Count Dracula, standing with one arm extended, sleeve rolled up high. He looks away as Ahul feasts on his blood, his mouth wrapped like a leech around Dracula's forearm.
Haven't you had enough yet?
Ahul doesn't respond.
This is pathetic. Even in hell, you can't kick this insatiable craving.
Ahul comes up for air. We've been walking for weeks. You'd be thirsty too if you hadn't been made mortal. Dracula gives him a disgusted look as he fixes his sleeves.
You heard Carmilla. Set is planning on opening Death's door, and I plan on being there when he does. If I'm lucky, Van Helsing and the Morton fool will be there to try and stop it, and I can kill 3 birds with 1 stone.
And how do you know the Vale Boy's visions were accurate?
It's all we have to act on, so we act.
You call this acting? There's not been a single sign of Pazuzu anywhere.
I'm not looking for Pazuzu.
Who then? Hyde?
Perhaps. This is the realm of demons. We're bound to come across one eventually. When we do, we will tell them our tale.
There's a sudden poof of smoke, and a voice speaks from behind them. Did someone say, tail? Dracula and Ahul turn to see the Collector, played by Billy Zane. He looks like a half-rotted corpse, his flesh shrinking on his skull. His nose has fallen off, leaving just a hole. His hair hangs down in long, white wisps. He smiles wide, missing almost half of his teeth. Who's this ugly bastard?
The Collector, I believe. Died after a woman spit blood into his mouth, if I remember correctly.
Sounds like a proper Saturday night to me. The Collector squeals with laughter. Now that's one I haven't heard before. I'm going to hang on to that if you don't mind. Ahul gives him a confused, disgusted look.
We need directions, demon. We're looking for the palace of the god of hell.
The Collector cocks his head and smiles even wider. Why, you'll have to be more specific.
What do you mean more specific? Set, the god of death. Tell me where he resides.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
I see. You're a collector. You want payment. Fine. What do I owe you in exchange?
Oh, no. You owe me nothing. Ever since I was banished down here, I've become a collector of stories. I wander from hell to hell, looking into everyone's personal little torture chambers and taking their terrible histories for myself. And whatever you're up to, Count Dracula, well, it seems like it will make quite the story. So, you're looking for Set, the god of death, as you seem to think. He points out into the nothingness. Walk that way until your first blister pops. Then make a hard right until you hit the river of molten gold. Wade through it and make camp on the other side until the flesh returns to your legs. Walk downstream along the river until you're stricken blind, then follow the sound of the lashings. If you step in more molten gold, you've gone too far. When your vision returns, you'll see the Temple of Set.
And that's that? We owe you nothing for your service?
It seems to me you owe enough already. Just know I'll be watching. And no matter what happens, I'll be sure to tell the tale. Dracula and Ahul exchange a look, then set off in the direction the demon pointed. As they recede into the distance, the Collector begins to laugh. As the laugh grows, it gets higher and higher pitched until it's practically a shriek, and we cut to black.
Gotta get your Tales from the Crypt, your one Dark Universe eligible Tales from the Crypt tale.
So a little explanation for the probably most of our audience who has not seen this movie.
I've not seen it, and I would have no idea if you hadn't already talked to me about this weird sort of loophole in the Tales from the Crypt eligibility.
In the mummy's hand, there's a part where I don't even remember who Claudia, is asking what is asking about demons or something, and mentions a couple universal. We talk about Pazuzu.
Yeah,
I think we mention
James Veneman
from The Exorcist 3, and the Collector. The Collector is from Tales from the Crypt presents Demon Knight, which is a Universal film, even though Tales from the Crypt, the series, is HBO and Warner Brothers.
You can find it on Peacock, and you can't find most of Tales of the Crypt. So
Demon Knight fucking rocks, and
Never
everyone
seen
should
it.
watch it. But Billy Zane is the villain of that movie, playing a demon called the Collector. At the end, he dies because Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, spits blood into his mouth, and it banishes him to hell. Now we're catching up with the Collector later in hell.
And he's basically the Crypt Keeper
He is
now.
basically turning into the Crypt Keeper. So our Dark Universe Crypt Keeper is Billy Zane from Demon Knight rotting in hell into the Crypt Keeper.
Now, can you specify this is still a distinct character from the God of Death who you gave the voice of the Crypt Keeper?
Yeah, because that was the actual actor.
Okay, yes.
That's just the actor playing one of our mysterious people that showed up at the end of Mummy's Hand.
Okay.
That was not the Crypt Keeper. I want to make that clear right now.
This is important
that
to
was
clarify
just the
this
voice
stuff.
of the Crypt Keeper. This is Billy Zane as our Dark Universe Crypt Keeper, who is a demon wandering around hell, looking at everyone's little personal hells and collecting their tales.
I love the directions that he gave. Very great. Very Dalton. This is basically your self-insert character now.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
All right,
we'll probably never see him again, but
yes, but now when we make our diagram of all of the things that are canon in the Dark Universe, we can include Tales from the Crypt, the Demon Knight.
Yes, everyone watch the Demon Knight. It's great.
Okay.
Billy Zane, so much fun in that movie.
Now,
he would kill this.
Let's talk about Let's talk about what we will call the third act.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
it's pretty. I would love to make it bigger and longer.
Sure, but I actually really like it.
Oh, good.
I really like it. I don't have many. You know what? Honestly, I think the only concrete note I have is I think we need a resolution to the Ferryman story, which I think can be as simple as a quick cut at the end, when Hunter's on their way back to see their mom, maybe before that, or maybe even after it, right before the cut to credits, we go back to the lagoon, to the cave, and see the Ferryman drawing Hunter as they look now.
Oh, I like that.
And I think that can be a good period on the Ferryman story. I think you have done a good setup here of asking the right questions without spelling out answers. I think you have spent a whole movie making it very impactful when Hunter goes back to see their mother. I legitimately got goosebumps at Hunter going back to see Gabrielle. I actually think you went about this sequel the right way, which is there's been a lot of people saying, will this involve Hunter reuniting with their mother? And I think making essentially the entire movie is the journey to that is the way to do it. Instead of it being like a thing in Act 2 where Hunter's just like, I should go see my mom, making this movie basically be about Hunter's journey from I left home to be myself, but then the creature being like, you're telling me that's enough, but you're here, so it's not. Think about that, which I'm putting words in the Ferryman's mouth. I almost didn't want to do this. I want everyone to read their own thing because I think that's the point of the movie, right? You wanted people to kind of draw their own answers.
Yeah, I'm trying not to nod or shake my head.
Yes,
or anything.
I don't want to.
Saying.
I don't want to know what you think about it because you have authorial intent, and that's not welcome here.
For a change, I'd like to leave it out.
For me, this is my interpretation. I encourage listeners to have their own. If you don't want to hear this, skip ahead like 30 seconds.
Yeah, the show's basically over.
Yeah. For me, the Ferryman is called Hunter back. Not even necessarily I think Hunter can see the lagoon again, not just because the Ferryman is calling to them, but because they are approaching a similar place where they think their problems are solved now that they have transitioned. But guess what? As much as it sometimes feels like transitioning will solve all your problems, it doesn't. It solves a couple big ones, but you still have life and you are still a person that is going to have things you need to reckon with. And so when the lagoon appears, it's not just the Ferryman's doing, it's Hunter's doing as well. And the Ferryman knows that. And the Ferryman, as a sort of dark mirror of Hunter in a way, faces Hunter and says, hey, you need to face yourself, literally, and figure out what it is that's got you back to me, you know? And for Hunter, maybe a piece of that, maybe not all of it, but a piece of that is, well, a piece of it is feeling stuck with the lagoon. Yeah, I'm myself, but now I follow this thing around. I don't have any friends other than Quasi. And by the way, justice for Phil. All the Phil heads out there, what? We're just going to replace Phil with Quasimodo now because you like Quasimodo. Phil deserves a spot in this movie. Where are my Phil heads at? Phil.
Okay, that raspberry is not because I don't care about Phil, but it's like, all right, so much. My movies this phase have been so mostly isolated from each other. I feel like it's important in order to keep the through line going. The relationship with Phil is a fucking universe dead end.
I disagree, and here's why.
Because you're planning on killing off Phil in death's door.
No. I think if the thing is that Hunter still is not done finding a place in their life where they're happy, part of that, yes, is going to see their mom again and seeing if that relationship can be rebuilt. Which it seems like it can, which I believe it can. As someone who came up with Gabrielle, I don't think that relationship was ever unfixed. Obviously, with some trans people, your relationship with your parents may never be fixable. And if you don't want to ever talk to them, good. Be safe, but take care of yourself.
But, you know, these are all individual relationships.
These are individual relationships. This is years later. I believe that Hunter could find a healthy relationship with their mom. But I think also go see Phil. Go have a friend. Like, I think that is also part of, and maybe that's something that can't really fit in because we need this, you know, maybe that could be part of the mid-credit scene or something.
It's one of those things where it becomes, to me, it is an extra wheel here.
Yes.
Like, because if the idea that I'm setting up is that Hunter has a new life that is distinct from the life that they had before.
Yeah.
Then their old friend from online who knew them before, even though, like, this is the first person who they said, call me Hunter to, right? And that's something. This is not as if Phil only exists in the old world in the way that Phil was sort of Hunter's first friend.
Phil's also in the mummy's hand.
Right. If Hunter is talking to Phil and not Quasimodo, someone with his own very complicated relationship, potentially irreparable relationship with his father.
Yes.
And also, let's all remind everybody that Quasimodo's around.
Look, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds of Phil. I think having Quasimodo be the relationship is good here. I'm just saying, for my Phil heads out there, if my head canon, and maybe I'll make this officially canon in a future movie, Phil is still around. Phil and Hunter are still friends. And after Hunter reconnects with their mom, Hunter takes a trip to California, and Hunter and Phil go to Disneyland together. And that's my headcanon.
Okay.
And I might set that in fucking stone and Van Helsing.
Hunter could be having conversations on Discord with Phil the entire time. It's just not in my movie.
It's just not in the movie.
There's just no reason for it to be in my movie, Dalton. Sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't have use for Elsa.
Justice for Phil.
I didn't have use for Phil. I'm going full Taika Waititi into throwing out characters from previous installments that I don't need. Be thankful I didn't kill Phil, Dalton.
But I think, and now Hunter is figuring out what they want their life to look like now that they're becoming an adult in themselves now. But anyway, that's my read. Phil and Hunter are going to have a great time at Disneyland together. Actually, Universal Studios. They're going to go to Universal Studios and ride the new Mario Kart ride together.
I almost thought about saying Universal Studios, but it felt like it was too much of a laugh line. So I didn't want to do that.
And Hunter and Phil will not be going to Hogwarts. They'll go to Universal Studios because of the brand connection, but they won't ride the Hogwarts ride because of trans solidarity.
Do you buy Lavelle as a character? Because I was hoping that I got her through line.
I need more of her backstory. I don't understand what she did to her. It seemed like her son was dying.
Because, all right, so here's the thing.
That's the last thing we know?
A thing that I don't mind explaining.
Okay.
Because I think that I would love for it to come through is that Lavelle, one of the things that kind of cemented the I cannot afford to regret the things that I do for my job is that I think that Lavelle went to work on the day of the Manaus incident, and while she was gone, her son died, and she wasn't there for him.
Okay.
I didn't have room in the pace of the story to have like more scenes in the hospital room, and I wasn't sure they were necessary. Now I know they are. And I want it to be the sort of thing where like it's probably a philosophy that she always had, the idea like, listen, I work for this giant shady organization that saves the world. Sometimes there's sometimes it's acceptable losses. And she had to double down on this idea when her commitment to the mission cost her something that is just completely invaluable to her, which is a final moment to comfort her son before he dies. And that she still sort of lives in that moment. And that's sort of the key thing for her that allows her to, that when the lagoon reappears, she will see it. She can visit it. She's in that place.
Here's my quick fix pitch. She's having the vision where she's in the hospital room and her son is there and Manaus is on the TV. They have this brief connection as you have it there, but then he says, Mom, and like points at the TV. She turns around, she sees what's going on, and he's like, do you have to go? Lavelle, living in both times at once, is like, no, I'm staying right here. Someone else can handle that. She turns around back to her son, and now it's the hospital hallway. And she's like, no, it's not. She starts sprinting through the hallway. She's yelling her son's name. She gets to the room. He's gone. It's now after. She couldn't, even though she's trying to make the decision to stay,
she can't change
now she's
it.
in that moment afterwards when she came back and he was already gone.
I like that. Also, I'm very impressed on how quickly you came up with that. That also
That's the
feels
podcast,
like
baby.
it better fits into, I want to call out two big influences that I haven't yet mentioned, in addition to like Metal Gear Solid 3, just in terms of like the weird
Is that going
vibe.
on the watch this?
It will be. There will be
should.
no movie. Annihilation will be on there. The rest of them aren't going to be movies. The other things on there are. I think Death Stranding probably fits more into this, but I haven't played Death Stranding, so I can't say
Lost.
I picked Lost. I think accidentally could be on there, but I have another TV pick.
Okay.
The first episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Emissary, which someday, Dalton, I might, when we potentially pivot Trex Education to doing television instead of movies. We'll see what happens. Listen to the bonus pod, folks.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with the phenomenon of being trapped in a tragic moment of your life that you can't escape.
Yeah.
And I pulled a little bit from that. I also, another non-movie influence, and particularly because we actually spoke to the creator of this particular graphic novel as it was coming out. Boys Weekend by Maddie Lubchansky was a definite influence on Hunter's story here.
The Hunter story, where because there's a moment in Boys Weekend where the protagonist.
But let's not spoil it too much.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Because it's a
very, very powerful moment that should bring any reader to tears.
It's literally like a breathtaking moment.
Yes.
So I won't spoil it.
Yeah, but it's the kind of thing where there's a piece of that story that I do not think I could have come up with myself and would not have attempted myself if I didn't have this example and felt like it was something that I could draw from and do sort of a twist on.
I actually thought about it as it was happening. I thought about that scene from Boys Weekend.
Yeah.
It's implemented very well.
Thank you. And thankfully, so few people have, compared to a major motion picture, there will be people who'll be yelling at us for cribbing that. I'll be like, no, we're friends.
Everyone read Boys Weekend. But I really like this third act. I think this is a solid story here. I think, like I said, we have notes to kind of beef it up for a second draft and to make one character change a handsome superhero character into a little girl who dies, just to make it a little more horror. But I think this is a really solid story. I think it is in my opinion, it is a worthy successor to the Black Lagoon. I hope the fans agree.
Not, and it's okay if you don't. Like, for some people, this is going to be the Bride and Frankenstein, right? Where it's not at all what they ordered. It's not the picture that was on the menu.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. As I said at the beginning, this is not a story I would attempt to do just by myself if it was not asked to do it.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting challenge because I think I'm sure that happens in Hollywood. If someone says, hey, do you want to work on this? We need somebody to work on this fucking remake of Point Break. And someone's like, well, I don't think there should be a remake of Point Break. Well, here's $500,000.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it now? So please, someone, I could use $500,000.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But hopefully it's satisfied. Hopefully it brought something new to the table. Hopefully, or at least hopefully, you didn't hate it.
Regardless,
yes,
it is now locked in.
Yes, it is.
It's alive! In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God.
And that's a picture lock on Return to the Black Lagoon.
Let's do what we're supposed to do in Picture Lock and just outline a few important things that happen in the movie.
That's right.
Hunter is no longer, at least for the time being, the keeper of the Black Lagoon. That would be Demi Lavelle, played by Lucy Lawless. She's doing her own thing out there. I did not make her our new Indrid Cold. She's actually our new Hunter.
Yes.
And Hunter has been given these strange artifacts by the creature from the Black Lagoon, whose purpose we don't really understand. I kept that off screen.
Mm-hmm.
This story does take place before Love Never Dies.
Yeah.
And these are the artifacts that were laid onto Carol's body as, quote, protection. And
I'm sure we'll find out more about that.
Protection from what? Who knows? Hopefully we do.
We have an idea.
Yeah, we have an idea. Yes. We're not just making that up as we go along. We have a plan.
Yeah. I think this all works great. We also, of course, have a version of the Crypt Keeper now in the Dark Universe.
Most
wandering around hell.
Played by Billy Zane.
Played by Billy
We've
Zane.
attached wiry Crypt Keeper hair to.
Mm-hmm. That's right, baby. And that's going to be it for Return to the Black Lagoon. And now you get a little break until Death's Door.
Yeah, I can work on future endeavors. The wrestling web series I started and then realized I did not have the bandwidth to continue. Now I can continue it.
That's why I'm usually here to, when you send me an idea, I say, Dylan, you don't have the bandwidth for that.
Stop that. No, I mean, that's me being you telling me to stop that. I don't think you... Dalton, I very much appreciate you reining me in.
Yeah,
it's my job to be like, but what if we? And you'd be like, fuck, we have to do it. It's your job to be like, what if you don't? Because you can't.
Yes,
you'll die.
Come back in 2 weeks where we're going to talk to some guests.
That's true.
We have not booked yet.
Out. If you're a semi-famous person and you would like to be on our show,
let us know.
Let us know.
We spent a lot of energy in the Patrick Willems thing and then don't have anyone else afterwards. But we're going to find someone. We'll have a guest episode for you in 2 weeks. And then in a month, Van Helsing. I will be pitching the finale of the Carmilla trilogy, Van Helsing. And then that will lead us right into Dark Legion 3, Death's Door. So we are rocketing up on the sort of midpoint of Phase 3 before we have a whole lot of stuff after that. So stick with us here. And until next time, stay afraid of the Dark Universe.